Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 29th, 2024 executive session of the Clarksville City Council. I'll announce before we get started with our agenda that at some point we will pause and take a photo of the women who are serving on the Clarksville City Council, and we will post that in the coming days as tomorrow begins Women's History Month for the month of March. So if we pause, it's just for that. First item on our agenda is the Planning Commission report. Mr. Tyndall, if you would, please, sir. And the first item is item A, ordinance 69, 2023-24.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. We have several cases before you tonight, and we'll start with this one. This is a Z1 2024 from the Planning Commission, application of Johnny Piper. It is 17.51 acres, currently zoned R1, OP, and C5, and requesting to go to R4. It's in this map here, you can see it's part of a larger parcel that contained a home site on it. The rest of the parcel goes to the east and is already zoned R4. I'll show you that there in a minute. The R4 is an extension of the R4 zoning classification. It's a tract of land located northeast of Fort Campbell Boulevard and Old Mill Road intersection. This is in Council Ward number 3. It's a former estate home site that was recently destroyed by the tornado, and the applicant's statement of use is to facilitate the property after the tornado destroyed the structure and vegetation. Again, referring back to this map here, the blue parcels to the east and to the south are not part of this big parcel, but the orange to the east there, before you get to Tynewood Road, is part of the parent parcel. So about 3/4 of it right now being requested to be rezoned all to R4, making a total parcel of R4. This is Old Mill Road as you exit Fort Campbell Boulevard. There's a strip mall that was destroyed during the tornado immediately to your right, and this home that was behind it with the picket fence. And that's looking back toward Fort Campbell Boulevard from where you were. And there's the home site. And there's the back of the property, so it does fall off as you get back towards the creek back there. And looking back up, the tornado pretty much went right by this house, skirted it just off to the side, but it went right over the property. There's some outbuildings on the property as well that have suffered damage, and you can see the trees, some of them really devoid of foliage out there. Department comments and concerns. The street department required a traffic assessment. It was received and accepted by the street department with no result. It was actually would result in a decrease in the level. Sorry, they wrote it in the double negative. It will not result in a decrease of the level of service. The existing a C5 out there has such potential for daily trips that the R4 is actually less than C5 for that property. The school system listed their capacities of Ringgold, Kenwood Middle, and Kenwood High School. And it is important to note that the property, the home on the site, is part of the National Register of Historic Places. It is not part of our local historic designation, though, so there's no local protections. And if you've heard us say it in the past, the National Register is more or less a honorary designation that you're recognized as a historic place. The historical estimates would be 210 additional units on the property. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The property and existing structures sustained significant damage from the recent tornado. This request is part of a node of development that has a mixture of commercial along the predominant roadways and transitions to a mixture of housing types in the area. The area provides R4 residential, and it is in character with the established development pattern and links well with the surrounding uses and roadway network. The R4 multifamily district request is an extension of the established R4 district to the east, and adequate infrastructure serves the site, and no environmental issues were identified as part of this request. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Just for the record, this is item B, ordinance 74.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. Nice to know you're human. All right. Comment or question regarding item B, ordinance 74. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes. Mr. Tindall, I believe that part of the conversation that I overheard at the meeting was that they do plan to keep the historical home and the slave quarters that is on that property is part of that's,
Yes, the owner has said to me on the phone and did mention from the public hearing last week or last day, that the intent of that, and they are going to put it in the sales agreement that the house has to stay. If you build an apartment complex, which is what this would be, that could then become the leasing office or recreational center for the site. So they will build around it.
I would just like this is why we need to update our community historical overlays.
Anyone else? Now let's go back and pick up item A, ordinance 69, 2023-24. Mr. Tindall, please, sir.
Sure, apologize about that. Our agenda was a little out of order from yours. Z02 2024, I assume that's the one, yep. Sid Hedrick, 01 to R2A. This is remanded back to the Planning Commission at the applicant's request to go from R3 to R2A, and we studied it this time for R2A. This is 2.03 acres, currently zoned 01 and requesting to go to R2A. It's at the south of Swift Drive and Ridgecrest Drive intersection. It's in City Council Ward number 7. It is a semi-wooded tract with moderate to steep slope in existing areas of concrete on site. And the applicant's statement is to better align the property with the surrounding area, office to residential use. Same photos as last month as you come down Swift Drive to Ridgecrest. And there's one of the entrances to the property. The applicant has stated there would be significant grading needed to make house sites out of this by moving the dirt and flattening it out. Looking back towards Ridgecrest, the property is on the left. There's another picture of the entry. With the 2 acres, these would all be frontage lots, so don't think about it being a subdivision at that gate. This would just be lots that front on Ridgecrest Drive. Sidewalk would be required and evaluated at the subdivision phase, said the street department, and a drainage easement would be required on the property. Historical estimates now are 9 units. I think we had 11 or 12 last month with the R3. So it's down to 9 historical estimate for this property. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The R2A request removes an area of O1 office that is out of character and proposes a single-family residential zone that presents a lot width and density that does not substantially alter the character of the neighborhood and affords a minor increase in density over the R2 single-family zoning in the area. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified relative to this request. The Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Comment or question? Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you. So R2A, you think that matches the area?
I do. I think
Where are there R2A on the map?
you're dealing with single family versus single family. The homes that are going to be built are probably around the same size as the existing homes. Really have a lot of pictures of the existing homes out there. The lot sizes will just be a little smaller, which is pretty much indicative of a 2020s development pattern versus when this development was created back in the day. But you're dealing with a home versus a home. It's not multifamily like R3 could have been last month.
Thank you.
Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're now ready for item C, ordinance 75, 2023-24. Mr. Tindall? That is?
This next application, Planning Commission case number Z3 2024, is the application of Maria Gold. Covington Ventures is the agent. This is a request for R1 to C5. It is an extension of the C5 in the area. This parcel is on Needmore Road, approximately 955 feet east of Needmore Road and Needmore Court intersections in Council Ward number 11. It's a vacant grassland field with small tree lines, and it's to provide a commercial development and a small contract warehousing. I'll double check on that council ward and let you all know. I don't think that's 11 out there. There's the property as you drive by on Needmore Road. It is set down from the roadway a little bit. I'll talk about what the street department comments are in a minute. The home is not part of the request at this time. It goes behind and around the home. That's a different parcel. And here's from a side street looking back towards the back of the property. Needmore's on the left. You can see how it slopes down. And here's from Needmore Court looking back, so just past the jump place, as we all call it. This property is just past that. Department comments and concerns. The street department required a traffic assessment. It was received and it was acceptable and will not have an adverse effect on Needmore Road. A drainage easement and a 100-year flood easement will likely be required, and they'll need to identify where that is on the site at the site plan phase. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The C5 highway and arterial zoning request is in an area of which has a mixture of uses. The request is to extend C5 zoning from the west and north along the frontage of Needmore and is consistent with the established development pattern. Adequate infrastructure serves the site and no adverse environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question? Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you there, Mr. Tyndall. Question, did you receive any correspondence or any feedback from residents in that area opposing this development?
We didn't, before our Planning Commission meeting, we have not received any comments relative to this request.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item D, ordinance 76, 2023-24. Mr. Tyndall, please, sir.
This is Planning Commission Case Z4 2024, application of CJB Partners. It is 0.85 acres. It's 2 parcels that are currently zoned R1, and they're requesting to go to R6. The parcels are at the southeast corner of Britton Springs Road and Morningside Drive, and the southwest corner of Britton Springs and Ambrose Drive. This is in Council Ward number 3. You can see our earlier zoning case just across Fort Campbell Boulevard there. This is 2 single-family residential lots that suffered significant tornado damage. And the applicant's statement is to provide single-family infill with private alley access. And for this map, I do want to call your attention to the north side of Britton Springs is all R4. Remember, a lot of this was built in the 50s and 60s, annexed into the city in the 70s and the 80s. So the R4, which has always been out there, was at the time a small single-family lot subdivision. Everything to the south is R1 and is a very consistent pattern as you go down several blocks. And then as you get further into Britton Springs, the RM1 district, as you go down to the Evans Road and Bats Lane area. This is Britton Springs traveling from Fort Campbell Boulevard. We had a zoning case this past month. You can barely see the sign on the right. It's up for second reading, and this property is pretty much right across the street from that one. Here are the 2 properties. There used to be 2 homes, very similar to the ranch-style homes in the area. On these 2 properties, they did access Britton Springs Road. This is looking back across them. You see it's kind of flat. There's some fill and grading that would need to be done to accommodate any future development. Also important to note here that the power poles are actually outside the right-of-way in an easement. Typically, we see those power poles right at the right-of-way of Britton Springs Road, and I'll make that comment here in a second. And then that's looking back toward Fort Campbell Boulevard, approximately a quarter mile or about a 5-minute walk from here to Fort Campbell Boulevard. The street department said sidewalk will be required on Britton Springs Road, Ambrose, and Morningside Road, all the 3 frontages. No access to Britton Springs Road will be given, and they must maintain a 30-foot setback line from Britton Springs Road. That's important because R6, if you do have an alley, can go down to 0, but that would actually put you underneath the power poles. So after talking to CDE, they need to be at least 10 feet off the power poles or relocate the power poles. But similarly, the street department has said 30 feet. That will accommodate any future widening if Britton Springs should ever be widened. Britton Springs is currently a local road, but it does act like a collector. and that's just due to the volume that is on that road. No other department comments and concerns, and the school system's comments about their capacities listed for Manglewood, New Providence Middle, and Northwest. Historical estimates would be 10 units. Staff does recommend approval. The proposed zoning request is consistent with the land use plan. These properties and the previous structures sustained significant damage from the recent tornado. The RPC staff has reviewed the area due to the overall loss of structures due to the tornado for this area and have determined that additional density along Britton Springs Road near Fort Campbell Boulevard appeared to be appropriate, as it provides a framework for existing neighborhood to reestablish. Adequate infrastructure serves the site, including other residential supportive uses such as mass transit and retail services within close proximity to the east. Sidewalks will be required as part of the development under the R6 zoning classification. No other environmental issues were identified, and the Planning Commission recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question? Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, the city clerk can confirm for me, but I do believe this one is going to be deferred to next month or to April's agenda. So we won't have the public hearing on that until the regular session in April versus next week.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comment or question regarding this case? All right, we're ready for item E, ordinance 77, 2023-24. Mr. Tyndall?
This is Planning Commission case Z6, 2024, application of Trenton Road Properties LLC. This is 1.47 acres, currently zoned R1 and requesting R4, and it is an extension of the R4 classification. They do own the parcel next to it. The parcel fronts Trenton Road approximately 285 feet south of Trenton Road and Cypress Court intersection in Council Ward number 11. It's a semi-wooded parcel with a structure on site. And the applicant's statement is to develop a multifamily development with the adjacent property to the south and to the east. So you can see that property around it. They own that property as well, and they'll just use this property along with that. We do not have a development application at this time for the other property, so we would be seeing it for the first time when they submit that. That's the home and garage. That's part of the request. And there's a little more to tell you where it is on Trenton Road. The street department said reserve right-of-way for T-Dot widening project, and a traffic study may be required at site plan depending on the intensity of the use. Drainage easements will be required along the south and eastern property lines, and the school system noted their capacities at St. B, Northeast Middle, and Northeast High School. Historical estimates for just this property is 17. Staff recommends approval. The proposed request is consistent with the land use plan. The proposed R4 district is not out of character with the surrounding development pattern and is an extension of the established R4 to the south. And no adverse environmental issues have been identified with this request. The Planning Commission also recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Comment or question? Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Tyndall, I was just wondering, why are we not doing a traffic study? Like, why do we postpone it and you're asking us to make a decision without a traffic study?
Due to the traffic study policies, this 1.4 acres really doesn't tip the scales of the 17 additional units. The property around it has been zoned R4 for a while. When it comes in together, which we assume is what's going to happen, we'll get a traffic study then. That will tell us, do we need turning lanes, decel lanes, sight distance, which should be fine here when the site plan comes in. So to keep in mind, the R4 behind it could develop tomorrow without coming to city council, and we would still get a traffic study on that larger piece. We're just saying that if it develops with this parcel, we'd also get a traffic study on any site plan.
Since we already know, at some point we're gonna have to start doing this as we go. Otherwise, people will come in with pieces, not do a traffic study, and not have to build a road through their communities. Like collectively speaking. If I come in piece by piece, then I don't have to own collectively as I develop. we've missed that opportunity in the past.
That would take time. Time and money to, I think, do that. I don't think people are gonna start rezoning 2 acres at a time just to get around doing a traffic study. Cause even if they did that through the zoning process, we'd still get a traffic study when the project came in. You know, for instance, that parcel to the north is undeveloped currently. We don't have a traffic study on that. That's been zoned R4 for 20 years. Just hasn't developed. So again, for just the 1.47 acres, it's not gonna trigger needing a traffic study. If the entire parcel came in all at once and it was coming from R1 to R4, likely would have required a traffic study at this time.
But it's all one owner right now.
2 parcels, 1 owner.
Thank you.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And, Mr. Tennant, you said that, they already own the other part, and the other part is already zoned R4, so they can already develop on that part.
That's
All right,
correct. That's correct.
that's what I'm hearing. And then we have no opposition so far?
There was no
in the
opposition to
area?
this one. No.
Okay, and then, reference the TDOT, setbacks, and maybe for the mayor. Do we have any visibility on TDOT's, engagement of Trenton, of this road, Trenton Road?
Well, it's in the recently announced 10-year plan, that Trenton Road would be widened. So it's all dependent on money and patience and who the governor is.
So with that question, Mr. Tindall, during these setbacks for this proposed development here, what calculation will be used to determine how far they need to set this thing back?
Sure. I don't have an exact number for you. I know this area is undergoing the design phase by TDOT right now, and they'll hopefully enter right-of-way in the next, I guess, 18 months. If this comes in for a site plan, that's where our counterparts at the street department would reach out to TDOT and say, what do you want in this area? They'd likely ask for maybe a little more than they might need. And don't forget, we also have setbacks on top of the future right-of-way. So say right now, it's probably 55, 60-foot right-of-way. Maybe we need 100, so they'd get half that, maybe another 20 feet, and then you'd still be set back 40 feet from that. So if there was another 5 or 10 foot needed, you really wouldn't be encroaching into the property that much. But that's how it goes when we get development projects, is they'll reach out to TDOT, get in a ballpark. There could actually be a construction plan by the time this develops too. So, you know, it just depends on the timing of everything. But, you know, we typically get what we need during the site plan process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item F, ordinance 78, 2023-24. Mr. Tindall?
This is Planning Commission Case Z7, 2024, application of Manika Gold. Calvin Ligon is the agent. This is 10.87 acres, currently zoned R1 and Ag, just a little bit of Ag there. Requesting to go to R3, moderate residential district. It is not an extension of the R3 in the area. This property lies off the southern terminus of Ann Drive and the north side of Bell Road. And here's the area. You can see this area of the city has a little bit of mix of everything from R1, RM1, R2, Ag still really dominant out in this area. Even a PUD there to the south, some R3 and R4, and even R5 recently zoned there next to Glen Ellen. So almost every level of residential density is seen in this half-mile view of this property. It's a vacant field with a low area in the northeast corner. This is in Council Ward number 9. The applicant's statement is to build affordable single-family houses. R3 will allow more density, which will help keep the cost of the houses below the 200,000s and mid-200,000s, while helping the existing neighborhood retain their value. This is Bell Road as you exit Needmore. It's an old county road that only has a few structures off of it. This is Bell Road looking back. That's the pavement width. It has 20 feet of right-of-way. This is Ann Drive, a modern subdivision that was developed up at the north side of the property. This would be likely the primary access to the property. And you can kind of see through the trees to the left there, a bit of a low area. There's a localized 100-year floodplain on the property, which does limit some of the development. I'm not sure if the applicant has sent you a proposed layout, but he did send the planning commission a proposed layout of the subdivision. Gas and water said an off-site sewer lift station upgrade would be required. Street Department said if accessing Bell Road, improvements would be likely, widen to the full right-of-way width, 20 feet, as I mentioned. There's a 100-year flood easement that encumbers a portion of the property. It's on the northeast corner of the property. It eliminates about a quarter of the property from development. And then you see the school system about their capacities at Glen Ellen, Northeast Middle, and Northeast High School. Historical estimates would be 54. The applicants provided a copy of the, what they think they can get is 40, again, due to that drainage area in the northeast. Staff does recommend disapproval. The proposed zoning request is inconsistent with the land use plan. The proposed R3 moderate density residential district is not in character with the surrounding pattern. In order to maintain the linkage with the roadway, Bell Road will need to be connected and upgraded to standards requested by the street department. No adverse environmental issues were identified. The planning commission also recommended disapproval.
Thank you, Mr. Tindall. Councilperson Streetman, you recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, did I understand correctly at the Regional Planning Commission meeting that their intent is to not connect with Bell Road, that they would rather only stub it rather than connect and have to do the improvements to Bell Road?
Yes, and I'll call to your attention, in your packet, you should have a copy of the potential layout. That's what the applicant said when you go through subdivision review. However, one of our big requirements is that you connect to the surrounding road system. As you see on this property, it does have a little tail at the end which touches Bell Road, and we would require that to be connected to Bell Road. They would have the advantage of requesting a variance. Not sure if the planning commission would grant that or not. And I would also say that the subdivision they showed you here, this has not been reviewed for appropriateness, and we would never let a road just kind of die down there and into nothing. You'd have to have either some sort of cul-de-sac or connect to the existing road system. So again, it's a zoning case. A lot can change between this and the subdivision phase, but the planning commission would intend to connect those two roads together when it came through for plating.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Smith, you recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, I have a concern with the disapproval in the sense that I know the area out there, and I think building affordable homes would be great, something that many need right now. And I heard that you said that that it need to connect with Bell Road and the surrounding areas there. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
And they might require a variance. And so your disapproval is based upon what now? I want to make sure we hear this clearly.
It's based on the fact that the density of this project is at the end of Ann Drive or even Bell Road, which is pretty significantly off of Needmore Road, where your existing density, that R4, the R5 recently passed, even the R3 there, those are on Needmore Road and not at the back of a neighborhood. Again, with R3 sort of being newer, we'll say, with the changes of the single family and the duplex and the triplex that we went through about 6 months ago, it opens up an opportunity somewhere between, they originally wanted to come with R6, and they knew that probably would not be a possibility. R6 is a 25-foot wide lot. This allows them to take some of those lots down to 30 feet, knowing that part of the property has a drainage issue. That allows them to cluster their properties over instead of using the traditional cluster, which is a 50-foot lot. So that extra 20 feet wiggle room gets you maybe about 30% more lots on it, which obviously, as the more homes you can get per price of property, drives down the ultimate cost of the homes, where this developer is looking in the mid to low 200s.
So what would you suggest, that they change the way they have the plan set up so that they will be able to build these affordable homes, which are needed here in Clarksville?
Similar to last month, the initial recommendation would be R2 or R2A, or cluster. They could cluster it right now under the R1 provisions, but they probably don't get enough lots to make it feasible with what the applicant is potentially purchasing it for,
You said R1 or R2.
or R2A even, similar
How
to
many
the
units could they
request.
build? How many homes could they build with that?
Since R2A is about 10 feet wider, probably about 25% less, so 30 to 33 instead of the 40 they're showing here. Again, this all depends on how you lay out the road, which we haven't really gotten to that point yet, so.
Well, I would like to see these built out there because I think it's a great plan. And I don't know why, like I heard you say about the disapproval, but I think that the disapproval is not fair. I just think that, I've seen other places built, and they don't have the same, zoning, which you just showed earlier. And I think that we need to work with, Ms. Gold, Dr. Gold, to see if we can get this accomplished for the good of this city and citizens. Thank you.
That's why it's in your hands.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
So I remember when we did the R4 that's up in the front of that and asking why we couldn't get onto Bell Road. And I see that it's still that sliver of an owner who prevents it. But eventually, Bell Road's gonna have to be widened, right? I mean, because of all that ag back there.
So if this application connects to Bell Road, which would be the planning staff's request, they would widen it to the full right-of-way width of 20 feet, so two 10-foot lanes. It's okay for cars, it gets a little tight there for trucks. Should the property south of this develop, where Bell Road actually goes through, that's where, if that developed, we would request the additional width at that time of the right-of-way, up to a full 50-foot city right-of-way, and get the city street developed to its full width through that property. This would be considered an off-site improvement. It's one thing to get pavement, it's another thing to have that property owner have to get property from someone else. That makes things a lot more tricky.
Okay, thank you.
Councilperson Streetman.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tyndall, I do have a question for you. With it being R3, that obviously opens the opportunity for multifamily housing. You're talking about 10 acres. I realize part of it couldn't be utilized, but I mean, in your opinion, how many multifamily buildings could you get there?
The way the R3 regs are built, the density between the single family and the triplexes is very similar, so I'd still say about 40 units, but it would be obviously on larger lots with the triplexes on them instead of individual single family houses.
Okay, and I know, if I remember correctly too, that they had talked about originally considered coming in as R4.
They said they might want to come back and do that as well, but we'd have to evaluate that at that time.
Okay, and then you talked about, you said it would be maybe 10 less if it was R2A. What would it be if it was cluster and done as still as R1?
Again, this is, without running all the numbers on it.
Apologize.
And yeah, it's okay, and that's why surveyors get paid what they do. You're probably looking at the 20 to 25 unit range then,
Okay,
instead of the 40 or so that they're looking at now.
okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for item G, ordinance 79, 2023-24. Mr. Tyndall.
This is Planning Commission case Z8 2024. Application of James Pelham. You saw this one probably about a year and a half ago. It was denied. They were requesting to go to R6. This time they're coming back and asking for R2 for the ability to build two lots. This property's on Earl Slate Road, 275 feet from Sanders Road, City Council Ward number 11. It's a single-family residential home site and an adjacent landlocked parcel. And the applicant's statement is to rezone this to add an additional lot and replat to fix the parcel line that is landlocked. So as you're looking at it, the top left corner as it comes over, that's actually a landlocked parcel. The person to the right owns what would be the rectangle. They're going to replat them, keep the home there, and add one more building site off that flag lot. And here's the property in question and the existing home. Looking back up Earl Slate Road. Possible gravity sewer main extension will be needed by the owner as they build the new home. The street department said check the 100-year flood elevation for sinkhole on adjacent property to the west at construction drawings. And the school system provided the comments for St. B. Burt Elementary, Rossview Middle, and Rossview High School. Historical estimates would put it at 2 units, and you have 1 out there already, so 1 additional unit. Staff recommends approval. The zoning request is consistent with the land use plan. The R2 district is in character with the surrounding development pattern and will afford the applicant to build 2 homes on 2 conforming lots, and the adequate infrastructure will serve the site. No adverse environmental issues were identified. Planning Commission also recommended approval.
Thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Any comment or question regarding this case? I have a question. We've heard it before, where they've said they're gonna just build one more house on a piece of property. How many could they build?
Just 2.
Just 2?
With the amount of frontage they have and the R2 standards, that will make it just enough for 2.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment or question? Seeing none, we're ready for that holdover there. Mr. Tyndall, we're on ordinance 68, 2023-24, old business.
Okay, and that's the, I assume that's the.
Z 70-2023, planning case, zoning case.
So this was heard last month. The planning staff brought this back to the planning commission. I provided some additional information today. Again, this is an area that saw significant devastation during the tornado.
Let me back you up.
I'm sorry.
We've got, this is the application of PB&J for a PUD off
sorry.
Riverside Drive.
That was deferred at the planning commission for a month.
Okay.
So the traffic study has not been completed yet,
Right.
and that will come back next month.
Okay, forgive me.
And it's
didn't
still
know
within
that.
the 100-day clock. The next month, it would have to be passed and then passed again to be within the 100 days of that. But they
Okay.
are still on track to get that done.
All right, now we're ready for ordinance 70, 2023. Mr. Tyndall.
So this was remanded back to the planning commission last month. This is the zoning text amendment to change some of the language in the RM1 zoning classification relevant to the mobile home district, allowing just mobile homes and stick-built, conventional-built homes to be built in the RM1 district. We showed you the map last month. The tornado pretty much went right over that area. You've even seen 2 zoning cases near these areas. This month, we do receive a lot of calls during the months from other people who own that. I provided you a spreadsheet earlier today, and I encourage you to look over that and ask us any questions today or over the next week. I broke it up into 2 tabs. One is all the parcels that had a mobile home on it, and thank you to the assessor's office for getting us this information. This is all parcels in that area only that had a mobile home park on it, or mobile home on it, or a mobile home park, that had any level of damage during the tornado event. And as you can see in the city, the parcels in the city suffered significantly more damage than those in the county. As we look further at these, the majority of them, with the exception of 4 lots, are all zoned RM1. A few are R4. We have 1 R2D sitting out there, and that's it. Of the lots that we looked at, some already have more than 1 mobile home on them. Some could potentially be divided right now as they already sit because they have enough acreage or enough road frontage into additional either mobile home or, if this ordinance passes, could be conventionally built lots. We have seen some of these mobile homes be replaced, maybe not with newer ones, but used mobile homes in the past month. We've driven out here 2 times this past month and have seen changes as people are getting back on their feet out there. And then I'll just leave you with this story of this woman who came in last week. Her uncle lived in one of the mobile homes out there in the city limits on Calvert Drive. He could not afford to rebuild out there, so she has actually bought it from him and intends to build a house and let him live back in it. Her sister owns a mobile home lot a couple doors down, actually in the county. They straddle the city-county limits up there. Well, the county passed the ordinance, and she's on her way to pulling a permit to build on her lot, and her sister in the city right now has to wait for either this to happen or request a rezoning. We told her to wait this month and see what happens before she makes the decision to spend the $1,500. I also think I said in my email today to you that should this change happen and not make the residents have to rezone on a case-by-case basis. And assuming all 71 lots rezoned over the course of history, it saves over $100,000 of the citizens' money to go through the rezoning process. The Planning Commission looked at this, we discussed it at our informal meeting, and the decision was to leave the language the same and send it back. They and the staff believed that it was the right thing to do last month, and I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tyndall. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Tindall, can you, I'm sorry, remind me, if there's a mobile home in a mobile home park, does this change that as well?
So every mobile home park in the city is a grandfathered use at this point. Some of these lots, and if you look at this list, you'll see some, like for instance, one's 1961 through 1963 Camino Drive. That means there's 2 mobile homes on that parcel. These are small mobile home parks, 2, maybe 3 total units, not 70 or 80 like we might think of a larger mobile home park. So they've just evolved over time. Again, I think I said it earlier, this is an area that the city annexed, was built in the county. A lot of these lots and homes were built prior to being annexed into the city, and some of these smaller, what would have been rural mobile home parks, were kind of inherited by the city when they annexed it back then. So there are a few that have more than one. I think one has 3 or 4 on them, but for the most part, it's single mobile homes. The RM1 district as a whole, though, only allows for 1. If they have 2, they will be able to continue to have 2 being grandfathered.
I mean, like the one off Whitfield, the mobile home park off Whitfield.
Oh, there's none like that in this area.
But I mean, we're doing this for the whole city, right? We're not just talking about this area. This applies to the whole city.
But
Right.
the one off Whitfield is zoned, I think, ag, so that's its own zone. The RM1 zone as a whole throughout the city, of which half the lots are right here on Britton Springs Road, allow 1 mobile home on 1 lot, should you do it new. There are some examples where there's existing lots that have 2, 3, maybe 4 lots or mobile homes on them. But we have that in R4 or ag and other districts as well. New Providence has quite a few of those lots as well.
What about the one over by the hospital?
That's not an RM1 subdivision either. Yeah. The only pockets of RM1, again, half the lots are right here on Britton Springs Road. There's a little bit on Nam Drive and 101st, right at where 101st and Fort Campbell come together behind some of those new townhouses that were built. There's some scattered RM1 lots in New Providence, but not really a cluster of them. And I think you saw a few of them today off near Ann Drive. That's it. I mean, that's all there is for the city. There's not any other RM1 on either Tiny Town Road or Fort Campbell Boulevard or anything else.
Thank you.
All right.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tanya, would you explain the stick-built traditional construction home?
Sure.
And
So RM1 only at this time allows you to build or bring in a mobile home. So a single wide, as we think about it, it's built in a warehouse, built in a controlled environment, and it gets a HUD sticker. It is not inspected by the city building and codes department, only by HUD. And it has wheels, and it's brought on site, and then it's either kept on the wheels, put on a foundation, usually they'll put skirting around it. That's what we mean by a mobile home or a single wide. Stick built would be built on site with contractors, and timber brought to the site. Or you may also see modular construction that comes in trusses, or even a double wide that we talk about when it's brought in as 2 or 3 pieces and put together. That is also considered conventional or traditional construction. So as of right now, the way it's written in RM1, only a single wide mobile home, whether new or used, could be brought back onto the property.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, Mr. Tyndall?
I think we're done, and appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're now ready for the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the consent agenda.
All items in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council and may be approved by one motion. However, a member of the council may request that an item be removed for separate consideration under the appropriate committee report. Ordinance 64, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance accepting the donation of certain real property from Edward Burchett Property to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 65, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance accepting the donation of certain real property from ACI Investment Group property to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 66, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance accepting the donation of certain real property from Melissa G. Tennant Property to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of a sewer pump station. Ordinance 67, 2023-24, second reading, amending the zoning ordinance and map of the city of Clarksville, application of Donald Webb for zone change on two parcels fronting on the north frontage of Britton Springs Road, 820 plus or minus feet west of the Fort Campbell Boulevard and Britton Springs Road intersection, from R4 Multiple Family Residential District to R6 Single Family Residential District. Ordinance 73, 2023-24, second reading, an ordinance levying a privilege tax upon the occupancy of any hotel or motel or any place in which rooms, lodging, or accommodations are furnished to transients for consideration. Resolution 39, 2023-24, a resolution approving a renewal of a certificate of compliance for sale of wine at Riverbend Wine and Spirits located at 1206 Highway 48 in Clarksville, and the adoption of minutes from February 1st, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilperson Shekinah,
Yes.
you're recognized.
I would like to pull one, Mayor. I just put my light on early.
Okay, well, we'll take that up next week. Okay, thank you. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yes, I'd like to just discuss the motel, hotel tax, ordinance 73, 2023, 24E. I know that as council members, we've all seen the emails, indicating that this will put us at one of the highest tax rates for our hotels in the city at a 21.5%. And I'm very concerned. I abstained because I felt like I didn't have enough information. And I'd like to know, Mayor, is there an opportunity to change the percentage or have that conversation? I know many people were ready to vote and said that they would not defer it last month, but I think there's conversation that needs to be had around this ordinance, and I was wondering what your reaction was to the emails that we're receiving.
Well, my preference would be to go full steam ahead with this, knowing we got a lot of work to do ahead of us for a performing arts center and to support the arts in our community. 4% was not proposed lightly. It was considered, and that's where we landed. So that's my response.
Well, I'd like to say publicly that transparency and inclusivity in our community is very important, and I feel that this magnitude of a decision was made without ensuring that and reaching out to our community. I know that when you reach out, there's no easy things, but we have really created, I think, I don't even know at the end of the day if either of these, I think they're probably great ideas, but we're never going to get over the noise that we've caused by not being transparent and including. I've heard from many of our volunteers that, they're wondering we weren't included in the decision to create the board, and now from our hotel motel people that they weren't contacted and part of the conversation. And I feel like that we broke some trust here. And I think that we should pause and regain that trust to move forward before we move forward.
Councilperson Shekinah, be recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For the hotelers out here, I appreciate all of you all for coming out. And first and foremost, they actually support the arts, and they believe in the arts, and they believe in this plan, that they want this plan to happen. But they just want to be able to sit and talk and be at the table because the tax part impacts them the most. And they have contracts already lined up for the summer, and they would be in a bad position to have to go back and renegotiate those contracts or just accept a loss. So just for that particular audience, I think we should slow the pace down.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Having also seen the emails in regard to the rate versus other cities throughout Tennessee, I actually took some time to go out there and research the average rate in those other cities. And while, yes, this would increase our overall hotel motel tax rate above what theirs is. As far as their nightly rate, the average rate looking at some of those cities was substantially higher than ours. So to me, it looks as though it would still keep us competitive in trying to bring people to our area. Plus, when I think about the fact of it was referenced in one of the emails talking about sometimes people stay here just as a pass through because of our lower rates. They would still be having those lower rates that they're able to get. But on top of that, when you're adding this, yes, they would be paying a few more dollars for the nights they would stay here as they're passing through. They're also getting a value add. This is a great opportunity for us to have something that creates dollars here in our community. I'm still in favor of this. And again, I took that time to go out there and see what those average nightly rates were versus our nightly rates. And I mean, Clarksville is a great place to visit, and this is just another opportunity for them to enjoy things while they're here.
Councilperson Redd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I think because we had the special called meeting and now it's just a week later that we're going to actually be voting on this is why it seems like there hasn't been a lot of time. Usually, the way our forefathers set it up, you would have the first reading, and then about a month later, the wisdom of our forefathers is before you can codify a vote, it usually takes at the next reading or the next month. So, and I spoke with a lot of the hotel and motel owners as well, and they feel like that they're being picked on because the county raised it whenever they did the plaza or commons and other things, and then now we are entering into the theater business, and it's like, hey, they come to us every single time. I guess because they put on the title, it has to do with tourism and people staying here. And but I would be open to postponing to see if we could find another alternative to, and maybe even looking at having the county without raising anything. Ask the county. I mean, they get much more of the sales tax than we do. Am I correct?
It's an occupancy tax. Yeah, they get about 87.5% of what's collected.
And maybe we can ask them if we can get 2% of theirs and 2% from some other place. But I'm saying I'm not opposed if somebody wants to postpone it at next month's meeting. And I guess this is just a point of information concerning what one of the previous speakers stated. It was my understanding if the board members that are picked, we get to vote on those.
We did on Monday.
The board members, okay, that was in that part of the vote, okay. But in any case, they were there with their all their information and that sort of thing. Okay. And how long is their term on that board?
Well, it's a 4-year term, but because it's a new board, we staggered. Some will serve 1 year,
Yes.
some will serve 2, some will serve 3, so they don't all roll off at the same time.
Okay. Well,
And that's in the information.
and if there's an objection to one of the board members, I suppose it would have been amendable to take out that board member and put in our own name, correct?
Well, the way the resolution was drafted, it's much like all our other boards. The mayor proposes and the council disposes.
Yes.
So
Well, I don't know, they changed it on Mayor Pro Tem at least one time.
I know, you're right. You're right. They sure did in error.
I'll shut
Yes, sir.
up now. Thank
Okay.
you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I would like to ask everyone who came out to from the hotel community that would like to have more time to review this to please stand. They're just asking for another month to have this conversation and review. I think that this shows you that we've missed an opportunity to be inclusive with our community, and I hope that we can postpone it and continue the conversation. Thank you. There are other opportunities, even a split. They're not demanding that we go away with it, but just to look at perhaps a charge on a ticket and another charge in another area, just to diminish it and maybe spread it across the community. And I will remind you that I do believe that we all voted already to fund this building, so there is money set aside, so it could again be a compromise.
No, we didn't vote to build the building. We voted to design the building and do some studies to get it right on that corner. But no, we have not voted to build the building. Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm all for the Performing Arts Center, and I do think no matter what, it's probably going to happen. But I agree with the councilman from Ward 11. We need to slow our roll here. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Councilperson Streetman.
Mayor, maybe you or Ms. Matta could answer the question. I mean, we had timelines in place for specific reasons. And then in regard to if it's not the 4%, what happens in this process? And I'm sorry to have to ask that, but either if one or two of you could answer that, please.
Well, I will ask Ms. Matta to come forward
Thank you,
and
sir.
work on the timeline and the projections. But again, it was not gone into behind closed doors. We did include the three entities, and we talked to them early on about what we were doing with the Tourism Development Authority, and for them to say otherwise is not true. Ms. Matta, please.
So the timeline that you all were provided was to be able to give the hoteliers time to implement the additional tax and be notified of the additional tax, and then for it to go into effect starting in June, so that the collections would start in July. And then all the other pieces that went into place that you all have approved, a lot of it puts the board in place so that the board can start approving all the things. We can transfer the assets over to the Tourist Development Authority and everything to be in place to start collecting it and funding the construction of the Performing Arts Center. Without the hotel motel tax, we cannot issue debt to construct the Performing Arts Center, so that would have to stop if there's no funding source, because we cannot issue go bonds in order to pay for the construction of the Performing Arts Center.
Thank you. Councilperson Streetman, you have the floor.
Thank you. So in regard to talking about with those dates, obviously July 1, that's the start of a new fiscal year for us. So that would be where this time falls in at.
Yes, and also because this funding, it's a dedicated revenue stream to pay for not only the construction, but the entities that will fall under it and to hire an executive director. So without the funding source, those entities would have no dedicated revenue stream to fund them.
Okay, and then if it's obviously, we were to change the amount, it's not 4%, it's not the same amount, it's a reduced amount, what happens?
That would impact our ability to issue revenue bonds to pay for the construction. You have to prove that you have the revenue stream to afford the debt in order to issue the bonds to pay for it. And the 4% provides enough revenue to pay for the existing entities' financial support, to pay for an executive director to stand it up and manage the entire entity, as well as the debt in order to construct the facility.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilperson Reynolds, you have questions for Ms. Matta?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
All right.
Okay, I'm a little confused. So we can't decide to pay half of the bill? I mean, when we voted to purchase the performing arts and to do the design, I, as a city council person, was under the impression that we would then assume the responsibility and the debt to build it. I mean, it was never directly said that we could not do that. Can we not do that?
We cannot do that, and that's something that I've been working on with the mayor and our bond council for a couple of years now, is how do we pay for it? We are not allowed to lend our credit, and we had our bond council here speaking to that effect at the workshop, and she'll be here again next week. We're not allowed by state law to lend our credit to any other entity. So we cannot build a performing arts center and let somebody else run it that's going to make a for-profit out of it, and it can't be on our dime. It has to be another.
So how did the county build the arena?
I do not know what rules the county follows. I cannot speak to that. I can
Yeah, you'll
only
have to
speak
ask
to
them.
us.
I mean, because it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
They have a sports authority, don't they?
They do.
That's how they did it. That's why we're creating the Tourist Development Authority.
So I
Right,
just
forgot
want to
about that.
say, if I went back in time and was given this information when we bought the building and moved forward, I probably would have not had the same decision. I mean, I was not aware of that. And I did not get, I know that we had a meeting, but I didn't have time to read the book. And before the meeting, we weren't given the information, obviously, to even ask questions. So this is going very quickly, and I assumed we would just half pay for it. So now this is, I don't know, this is a problem.
Councilperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for you. When was the last time the privilege tax was raised?
We don't have a city tax on
You don't?
hotels. We have zero.
So we don't tax the hotels and
No,
motels?
we do not.
Not at all.
City does not have any hotel motel tax whatsoever. The
Really?
county has a
Oh.
hotel motel tax. The
So
city
this will be
has
the
nothing.
first time oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought they paid a privilege tax from
They
the city, but
pay-
it's from the county.
They pay Montgomery County privilege tax, and then there's an agreement between the county and the city that allows them to pay us a very small portion of their 8% that we dedicate to fund the museum with, because we have to dedicate our share to tourism. So out of all the money that the county receives, that from their 8% hotel motel tax, we get about $600,000 a year, and that only pays about a little more than 50% of the operating costs of the museum.
Do you know why we never charged them a privilege tax?
So up until 2021, state law said that if a county already had a hotel motel tax, the city could not implement a hotel motel tax. So I don't know when the county implemented their 8%, or whatever their percentage was for the county tax was prior to me coming here to the city. But when I looked at it, when I came here in 2013, we were not allowed to have our own. We did not ask the state to change the law. I do not know when or how the law changed. I found it kind of accidentally in 2022 that the law had changed in 2021. And now in 2021, the state law says any municipality, and it defines us as an
of course.
independently chartered municipality, that we can levy a tax of up to 4% on the hotel
So
motel.
this will be the first time, okay, for the city.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
good information. I didn't know that. I thought we were already charging, but thank you for
No.
that. And, so if we charge this 4%, can you give me an estimate or some kind of idea what it would look like?
Yes, ma'am.
Because, you know, for the tourists and how this is going to play out for the, hotels owners.
So I can't speak to, I mean, I can tell you it's gonna be 4% on the cost of the hotel,
Okay.
whatever the room cost is. But I can't speak to how it's gonna impact them, but I can
Right.
tell you what the projections are for us.
That'll be fine.
And that was in the booklet that we provided. Based on, and I do not have gross receipts, and I'm not allowed to have access to gross receipts of hotels. So projecting off the amount of hotel motel tax that we get from the county, I was able to project where I thought the 4% would bring us. So for 2024, based on the information that we're receiving in hotel motel tax from the county today, we would collect $639,000 from the county for 2024. And we estimate about $2.5 million from the 4% would come to the
How many
city.
hotels we have here? Do you know?
I think there was 44
44.
within the city limits.
Okay, 2.5 million. Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilperson Red for Ms. Matta.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank
you're
you.
recognized.
Two questions. First, the time sensitive one. So we cannot, at next Thursday, we cannot postpone because it is too time sensitive that this would,
So if,
for a month, we can't postpone. Is that what you're saying?
well, if you delay it, it pushes everything ahead.
Well, I know that.
on the-
Yeah, I
right.
mean,
So that would
Sure.
delay it to August.
I've
would
had
be-
projects and delayed it, and I understand it. Just,
Yeah.
Okay. What I mean by time sensitive, would the roof fall in and cave in on the world or something, not just, yeah, okay.
The world isn't gonna cave in,
All
but I
righty.
don't know how we fund, because the new budget year, you passed a resolution that says that the TDA is gonna fund the museum, the, Arts and Heritage, and the Roxy.
Yeah,
They don't have a source to fund them.
and this 4%, it gives us $2.9 million annually. Is that
That's a
right?
projection.
That we would have. Now, is there any reason why we could not ask the county for 2 or 3%, and just raise it by 2? I mean, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, just
You could
as a
ask for
possibility
anything, I guess.
for one thing.
You could ask for anything.
Okay.
I can't speak for them.
But as long as you have the revenue stream, we're good to go, however, but you need to have around, that you figured out 4%, you need to have about $3 million annually.
Yes, because that
Okay,
would be
that's
the
just-
revenue that's needed to cover to issue revenue bonds
Okay.
to pay for the debt.
And then you'll be all right, as long as we come up with $3 million. Okay, thank
Each
you.
year, it has to be a dedicated revenue stream, otherwise they won't.
I
issue
understand,
revenue
it had to
bonds.
be every year
Yes.
going on, yeah, okay, thank you.
Councilperson Shekinah, you're recognized for Ms. Matta.
Yes, Ms. Madden. So time sensitive, if possible, if we push this thing back 10 days, not a month, but postpone it 10 days, could we still get on track for the right time? That way
Absolutely.
we at least give, the hotelers a chance to, sit down and talk.
If you have a special session, we get
Yes,
second
we have
reading
special
in
sessions,
place.
seems
Yeah,
like all the time, so yeah. Seems like we have another special session.
absolutely.
Oh, stand by. We got
Are
another
you
one.
ready?
All right, any other comment or question? Thank you, Ms. Matta. All right. We're now ready for the Finance Committee report. Chairperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. If possible, I'd like to read these next two together.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Ordinance 71, 2023, 24, first reading, an ordinance authorizing the exercise of the right of eminent domain to acquire easements, property, and rights of way required to facilitate construction of the sidewalk project on Ringgold Road. Ordinance 72, 2023, 24, an ordinance authorizing the exercise of the right of eminent domain to acquire easements, property, and rights of way required to facilitate construction of the sidewalk project on Burns Darden Elementary School, Richview Middle School, and Clarksville High School. Finance Committee did vote in favor of approval of these, and I would like, if possible, Mayor, would you mind bringing up Mr. Smith just to talk about these very briefly?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Mr. Smith, if you don't mind, come up and tell us why we're in this posture.
All right, so this comes forward today with a TSG disapproval and finance approval. They were grouped at Transportation, Streets, and Garage. There wasn't any conversation on those two particular ordinances. They were grouped with the sidewalk ordinance, and they failed. I've explained in finance, these are a couple of projects that are already approved. They're both school sidewalks that were endorsed. They're completely funded, and we have most of the property necessary to move forward with construction. These are a couple of outliers that, in some circumstances, don't agree with the appraisal value, don't agree with the total capture, or there's one of them I believe is in probate. So there's just a number of variables that make these difficult to acquire.
Mr. Smith, this also includes like dealing with the mortgage companies.
It does.
And trying to get those released from that as well, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Hi, how many do you estimate we've done this year about of these? Is this like
I
20,
couldn't
15?
guess. That's probably a pretty good guess.
Yeah, 15 or 20. So I'm not sure why 2 out of those didn't pass, but
Any other comment or question regarding these two ordinances? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
You bet.
Chairperson Streetman.
Ordinance 73, 2023, 24, first reading, an ordinance accepting the donation of certain real property from Aspire Clarksville to the city of Clarksville for the purpose of greenway development along Golf Club Lane. Finance Committee recommended approval.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Chairperson Streetman.
Ordinance 81, 2023, 24, first reading, an ordinance approving the acquisition of certain private property and divesting of city-owned property and authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement pertaining to the same for a public purpose for widening and improving the Clarksville Greenway. Finance Committee recommended approval.
Any comment or question regarding this ordinance? Seeing none, Chairperson Streetman.
That concludes my report, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Gas and Water Committee, Chairperson Holloman, you're recognized.
I'll have a report next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Neighborhood and Community Services, Chairperson Shekinah, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a complete report next week.
Thank you. Councilperson or Chairperson Zacharias, Parks and Recreation Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have a full report next week.
Thank you. Now ready for Public Safety Committee, Chairperson Red, you're recognized.
I will have a complete and detailed report next Thursday.
All right, we'll sit on the edge of our seat. All right. All right, Transportation, Streets and Garage Committee, Chairperson Smith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one ordinance, and that's 63-2023-24, an ordinance amending the official code, Title 12, Chapter 1, pertaining to Section 12-124 sidewalks. And at the committee, this was voted and it was disapproved, 2-2. We disapproved it. However, it will be brought back on the regular session for a vote as well.
Okay, all right.
And
Councilperson,
I will have my, I'm sorry.
oh, no, go ahead.
I will have my full report on March the 7th.
Okay. Councilperson Reynolds, you're the sponsor of that ordinance. You're recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of remind everyone, as the director indicated, we have now spent at least $60 million to pay for a court case since 2002 to build sidewalks. In this last year, at least 20 times we've come before us and asked to obtain property to build sidewalks on boundaries of properties that should have been done as we were in construction, because it's cheaper and more efficient to build a sidewalk while you're building the community than to put it in later. And that is one of the main reasons that I started this, was to create the boundaries of the sidewalks. And we are still building and approving communities that do not have a boundary along the outside road. They're putting sidewalks in the community and leaving a stub. And that means every month from here to eternity, we're going to take taxpayer dollars to close up boundaries that we allow builders not to do. Also, I've talked about ProWalk. ProWalk has been approved, as I said. That is the basis for the ADA, and it was approved in August of 2023. And I called ProWalk, and I also called Department of Justice in DC, and is currently on the unified agenda for the DOJ. So the requirements that I'm going to talk about in this will be law before the end of 2024. They're expediting it. That's what I was told at DOJ. So a couple things to remind everybody. We talked about the court cases, and we talked about adopting ProWalk. So leading up to this ordinance, I'd like to thank the Street Department, Planning Commission, actually community members. I've reached out all through the community. I started presenting and working on this in May of 2023 in the Street Department. I've had several different versions. I appreciate Councilperson McLaughlin, who's not here. She brought many suggestions at the committee, which I included and researched. The focus is to improve walkability in our community. The updated ordinance is supported by the Montgomery Health Council, and the language in this ordinance are based on ProWalk and other city existing ordinances. And everybody up here has had, since October of 2023, I've presented this twice since then, asking for input at the council. I've presented in October and then again in January, asking for input. And it's really very important that we update it. Otherwise we're gonna open ourselves as a community back up to another lawsuit. So it's been through the Streets Department. It's been through many organizations. I've sat down with several different builders in the community asking for their input. And just kind of a reminder, minimum sidewalk standards conform with ProWalk and ADA. And in conflict, and if there's a conflict, then the requirement is the more stringent. The width requirements are 4 feet for local roads and 5 feet for collector roads. That is per the input of the streets department, but 4 feet is required for PROWOG. And a reminder that when, under the new PROWOG, once it's adopted by DOJ, anybody that touches that sidewalk or that area then owns it and has to bring it up into compliance with the new standard. So it will continue to be a burden on the residents if we don't do it right the first time. So this affects new and old and PROWOG, but mostly this ordinance is to update what's working. It also does require a 2-foot grass landscape strip, and it provides an appeal process through the director of the streets department, and the appeals will be done in writing and will be reported to the committee, so to provide transparency. So I'd like to say one more time, if anybody has any questions or concerns, please bring them to me today from the floor, and I will research them and bring them up next week. If you wait until next week and you've held your peace since October, then I would say that you just don't support walkability and you don't support sidewalks, and that's all I can say.
First of all, let me ask for questions. Councilperson Smith, you recognize.
First of all, I would like to thank everybody that was on the TSG committee that listened to this sidewalk ordinance several times, and I know that we all asked questions. It wasn't a one-person informational standpoint. We all asked questions because you had in lieu of sidewalks, and you took that out because I questioned that and thought that was just illegal. It wasn't right. Also, you don't have anything in there about older sidewalks, as you keep saying, that we already have something in there about old neighborhoods that does not have sidewalks. That's not in the plan. However, nothing has been done about these older neighborhoods that's been wanting sidewalks in their neighborhood for walkability, rideability, or whatever. And so you also told us that you copied your information from another website, and you're using that and been trying to clean that up for almost since October. So it's been a tedious journey for me as the chair. And I appreciate you doing what you do, but however, please don't try to act like one person played a role in trying to get this thing together, because we all work together to get this thing right. And it's still not right in my eyesight. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson Redd, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just say this to make a point of information to everyone. Anytime you say that if the council votes a certain way or they vote against something, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't support all sidewalks. Of course, we have some that we have to take care of because they're under a court order. But to say that is getting close to questioning the motives of a council member. I wouldn't say specifically, but in generally, at the least. And anytime you use the state is going to penalize us, or the federal government's going to come after us with a whip in their hand or something and whip us into doing something, you can count on me to vote no. I'm just saying, if you want my vote, I wouldn't make that an argument. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. A few different things here. One, I know it was stated that the sponsor of this has contacted the Department of Justice and has gotten their reassurance from the federal government. We know how fast they move on everything, that they're going to make sure it's approved this year. But if I'm correct, I believe the PROAG standards not only have to be approved by and are adopted by the Department of Justice, they also have to be adopted by the the U.S. Department of Transportation, another very fast-moving department of the U.S. government. So am I correct in that actually those PROAG's not enforceable until, at the very least, those two agencies or departments have approved them?
Generally, that's true. Is that directed to the sponsor?
Whoever can answer that question.
Well,
I have additional ones.
Okay, we'll come back to you, but directed at the sponsor. Madam
So-
Sponsor, you're recognized.
So when I called Department of Justice and the Access Board, once it's adopted by DOJ, it is enforceable. That's what I was told on the phone. It is law now. It is on the standard. It is a standard. PROWOG is a standard, and probably 2/3 or many of the cities in our state already follow the PROWOG standard. If you read different cities, they follow it. They've been following it well before it was even officially adopted in October of 2023.
But they're not enforceable at this time.
We can choose to enforce it as a city.
That answered my question.
Okay.
Also, I had heard when this had been previously presented that this was gonna come before the finance committee, and there is absolutely a financial price tag to the city for, especially when you take into consideration 2-foot curb, grass strip that has to go along there, and that's gonna be something that we're gonna be forced to purchase. Without it coming before the finance, as was stated that it would, how do we know what the actual financial impact is regarding the purchasing of that additional 2 foot of land, as far as who's going to take care of it? Because obviously, if we buy it, we own it. It's our responsibility for our Parks and Recreation or Street Department or one of our various departments that have to go out and mow the land, because again, it's ours. I have a lot of financial concerns with this, that it's going to not allow us to be have more walkability and build more sidewalks. We're actually going to be able to build less sidewalks because of the price tag that's going to be associated with it. I mean, I can't see how the math is done any other way. Do we know why it was not brought forward to finance?
You want to ask the sponsor?
That
'Cause that
would
was
be
her.
another question
I
for the
think that was
sponsor.
her statement. Go ahead, Madam Sponsor, you're recognized.
So the 2-foot strip is in the ordinance is the property owner will maintain the 2-foot strip, not the landowner. It's in the ordinance. And also, it was actually it was discussed, and it was felt that it wasn't needed to go through, and that was at the direction of the director of the streets department.
The director of the street department thought it wouldn't need to go through the finance committee.
Yeah, let's not
No,
talk for him either. So we're going to bring him up here in a second. So hang on, Mr. Smith.
but my
Okay.
question then would also be in reference to, I know what it says in the ordinance, my assumption that has more to do with developments and how that would work. And of course, our current sidewalk ordinance says that any grass strip between the sidewalk and the road would be the responsibility of the owner. And well, we still seem to have to mow a lot of strips that are along and take care of strips that are in areas. Mayor, if we're building those sidewalks, there are sidewalks to build.
They are.
That 2 foot, are they likely to just sell us the 4 to 5 foot for the sidewalk and not the 2 foot in between?
Well, you're looking at adding additional cost, as you've referenced, and if the developer is building or the builder is building, it's going to be passed along to the homeowner.
Correct.
The purchaser of the home.
I mean, that pushes the boundaries further on the affordable housing that we keep talking about we have a need for. And then I had another question in there, I apologize. This is a lot of information, again, that we could have probably covered in finance had it been brought through there.
Okay, is that it?
That's it for now.
Okay, Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
Yeah, I would like to indicate that under PROWOG, it states that you have to have a cane detectable barrier between the sidewalk and the road. So it either has to be a fenced area or a 2 foot. They also talk about the speed of the vehicle, and if someone is going over 30 miles an hour, there needs to be a barrier between the road and the street to protect the pedestrian, especially those who have low vision or no vision. So the barrier is actually, if you go back and read PROWOG, that's actually a standard in PROWOG for those reasons. The chair of the committee for the street department brought up often putting sidewalks back into the neighborhood. I've explained that many times. There is a a matrix. The matrix is carried over. I did update some of the numbers on the matrix, but that is the matrix of deciding when to go back and infill sidewalks. And that is a budgetary decision as we move forward. We just voted this time, or, we disapproved two infills to go back into neighborhoods to put sidewalks in. That is the process to go back to address the neighborhoods. It's on us as a committee. We moved $6 million last year to support infill and putting sidewalks back in. And if we don't pass a sidewalk ordinance and move forward, we're going to continue to have to we talk about affordability, but it's really a wash of whether we do it when it's cheap and easier when we're building new houses, or we make the taxpayers pay double by having to go buy the property and put the sidewalk in as well afterwards, which is much more expensive.
Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. New developments are already putting sidewalks in, and I also want to clarify, if you look at ordinance 72, 2023, 24, one of the ordinances that's been referenced, two of the schools that are listed on there are Richview Middle School and Clarksville High School. They are actually along the road there. There's not houses or anything that are built where those schools are sitting. So it's actually, those are going to put those sidewalks right in front of the school. Also, I remember what my other question was. It was in reference to a previous speaker talking about wanting more sidewalks in her neighborhoods, which are older neighborhoods. Back in the day when homes were built, they were built much closer to the road. I know that we have that on Memorial Drive. There's a lot of houses along there that are pretty close to the road, and I know that's an area in my ward where they have really wanted sidewalks. I feel that this is going to be a detriment to our older neighborhoods in order to be able to put those down, and also this requires that the sidewalks go on both sides of the roads, and then you've got the 2-foot curb that goes in there. I am quite certain this would essentially eliminate Memorial from even being able to have sidewalks at any time in the future. And that absolutely concerns me, because that's an area that I would like to see us eventually at least have it on one side, so that individuals that live in that area are able to get to places such as the grocery store and restaurants and other things that are located right up the road. And it'd be nice for them to be able to get to by walking, and if we're promoting walkability.
Councilperson Reynolds, you're recognized.
I'd like to indicate as part of the process, I had the wording that said to the maximum extent feasible. As I walked through the committee, I removed that. But the director of streets has the ability and has the authority to waive the requirements. The only thing that he has to do is to put it in writing. There's a form as part of the waiver process, and it just has to be reported. Any waivers done just have to be reported to the streets department, so it is transparent. They still have the authority to make those decisions and to make those changes based on topographic, whether they own the property that's written into the sidewalk ordinance.
Okay, we've had back and forth twice from both members. It doesn't matter in executive session. All right, anybody else? Mr. Smith, I'm going to ask you to come and do your presentation that you did at the Streets, Transportation and Garage Committee to talk about sidewalks. There's been some information, your name's been tossed around quite a bit. So you are recognized, please.
And there it is. Yikes. Okay. It's titled Infill Sidewalk Issues, and I'll preface just a bit. This isn't exclusive to infill developments, virgin development as well. We all live in Clarksville. We've seen Clarksville. We know the topography of Clarksville. There is a waiver process. I'll speak to that very, very briefly before I get started. Yes, as the director of the street department, we can waive certain requirements. But as you'll see in many of these slides, and you'll recognize some of these areas, they're not specific to only one part of Clarksville. There's going to be a lot of waivers. And if we do that, the preponderance, or maybe not in the preponderance, but if we're above single-digit percentage of the cases that come before us that I'm waiving, it's not a good statistic to carry forward, personally. But what we're going to go through here, again, some of these are some sidewalk issues that would be specific to us, to a developer or otherwise. This is some of the stuff that came from the Home Builders Association. I met with them this last month, and we stayed for a little bit afterwards, and they had some questions and concerns about how to address certain things that came up. And we sat down and kind of detailed how we deal with those things. So these are a couple of images here, and we'll talk. Some folks are visual learners. I know I certainly am, and there's a lot of literature in front of you. There's a couple of different things that you see throughout Clarksville. Obviously, the conveyance of stormwater and runoff on the edge of the roadway with no curb and gutter. That's accomplished through ditches in the front yard beside homes and through the conveyance of culverts or basins like you see here on the upper right image. Under the proposal, we're going to have to capture, and this is for us or for the developer that's performing an infill, we're going to have to capture 2 foot at a minimum for a grass strip, maybe upwards of another 18 inches for curb and gutter, the 4 foot minimum for the sidewalk, or 5 foot, depending on what it is. But then we have this drainage ditch to deal with, and how do we do that? And there's a couple different ways, obviously. You can push the drainage ditch back beyond the sidewalk, but that obviously requires additional capture. And you'll see us here, instead of asking for a couple of inches or 1 foot of eminent domain, maybe upwards of 3 or 4 feet. So we'll be encroaching those properties just a bit farther. The other option, of course, is to convey that water under the sidewalk, which would be through just the system of storm drainage, and that's obviously considerable expense for us, for a developer, and in either circumstance, it's coming back to the homeowner. Just walking through, this has come up. Councilperson Reynolds has brought this particular case up several times. Why didn't we require sidewalks in this area on this string of homes at the corner of Peterson Lane and Old Trenton, or Whitfield? I apologize, the corner there. So we have, of course, you've got a series of mailboxes. You've got, as we've discussed previously, the conveyance of stormwater through a series of culverts under the driveway, and we've got utility poles also. So if we talk about the grass strip, and again, I mocked this up, so I apologize. I'm not a CAD guy. The 2 foot grass strip, our 4 foot sidewalk. I've left some space there for extruded curb and gutter, whatever the design comes up with. What do we end up with? Well, we've got a sidewalk, but now we've got to move a mailbox. We have to pay for that. We've got to convey this water. So we're tearing out the driveway, we're tearing out the culverts, we're trying to reroute the water. Maybe we're buying additional land, maybe we're carrying it underneath. We also have these poles now that have to be buried. The utilities are relocated to the side of the roadway. Whether we bear that expense, whether the developer bears that expense, I had my guys run the numbers and I ran it through our third-party engineers on some projects. It more than doubles the cost of any one of our sidewalk projects if these factors come into play. So sidewalk projects we already have underway, they're already funded. May have to come back before council for additional funding to accomplish any one of these things. This is another circumstance. You can see the topography. If you can imagine a 2 foot grass strip here next to the extruded curb and then a sidewalk, you're going to have a significant issue. And how do you counter that? Let me click back through. You've got to carry that water underground, or you've got to push that swale back. So if we're pushing that entire area back, we're in that person's garden they've got there, just to accomplish a sidewalk on this side of the roadway. This is a storm drain that runs perpendicular to the roadway. So just instead of running alongside the sidewalk and roadway, running across the roadway, this is some of the infrastructure that's required. Because of the amount of fall off the edge of the sidewalk, a guardrail is now required. The guardrail is obviously damaged in an accident. That's how this actually came in through C-Click Fix. So just an image of something. This is a new sidewalk. This is on Concord, I believe in North Clarksville. It was one of our sidewalk projects. So some of the things that we're going to have to do in and around the conveyance of stormwater. So I promise I didn't skew these images that are upcoming. This is the Whitehall subdivision that was just recently affected significantly by the tornado. We've got 2 different circumstances here. We've got an uphill lot and we've got a downhill lot. In either circumstance, we've got additional expense, whether we build these sidewalks again or whether somebody comes in and builds sidewalks on lots that are like this. On the uphill picture in the top right, you're going to have the potential of a retaining wall that now costs hundreds or thousands of dollars to accomplish what we're after here. Now, I got to tell you on that top picture there, I don't know after we cut a sidewalk in there whether I don't know how they're using the driveway to start with, but beyond that, they're definitely not using the driveway. and we have to pay for that loss. So if they determine that that driveway is no longer usable, it's a taking. And Mr. Baker, Mr. Zach Johnson can speak to what that accounts to. On the lower side of the roadway, we can't have so much fall, and I say fall, we can't have a slope that's so significant off the edge of the sidewalk that if somebody were to walk off the edge of the sidewalk, they would be further injured and tumble, seemingly in perpetuity on the image there. So we have to acquire what's called slope easement. Slope easement means we're going to grade the property beside the sidewalk at a safe distance before it can taper back at a slope of 3-to-1 or even less. I don't know that we're ever going to get that on that image there in the bottom right. These homes are practically right across from one another. So the alternative is a handrail. So the way we get around slope easements are handrails. So if you can imagine, the entire side of this roadway, if we put sidewalks on it, would have handrail all the way around. And it's not an aesthetic that I find particularly pleasing. And I don't entertain the idea of the maintenance associated with constantly painting a handrail seemingly year round. So again, what's that look like? We've got a sidewalk that traverses that. Again, that makes that driveway not usable. We're moving the mailbox. This is an area where the utility poles on the other side of the roadway, so the utility poles aren't affected. But we're definitely going to have to cut a retaining wall in on that top side because the fall off of that hillside is too great. At the top of that retaining wall, probably a guardrail. So we don't have a handrail, we've got a guardrail. Again, same thing here, slope easement, retaining wall, handrail required. And again, that's further down the roadway. You've got downhill on one side, uphill on the other. So could you install sidewalks? Absolutely, you could install sidewalks. Would we grant waivers? Probably grant waivers on most of these. So what happens to the connectivity of the sidewalks throughout the neighborhood when you get to a lot like one of these two? The sidewalk connectivity is broken through this neighborhood. And again, I don't have the greatest path ahead, but those are some of the things that I want to make you aware of. Some other areas through town, this is Marion Street. This is a road that picks up just one block down the road's Austin P. As was mentioned, I think by Ward 10 Councilwoman, if we put sidewalks in on either one of these properties, we're very close to somebody's structure. We're certainly in the crush path of the foundation of the home on the left there. And we're definitely doing a retaining wall, top of the retaining wall guardrail, handrail on the bottom side if we're on that side. So again, there are a lot of challenges. This is another project that we did on, I think, Kirby Drive, just to show you, because of the change in grade, we had to install a retaining wall. So there's just additional cost. That was the last one, apologies. I thought I had one more, but again, I just want to bring these to your attention. This is some of the stuff that came to my attention through the HBA, through some of our developers, especially those that are doing a lot of our infill projects. I know we have a lot of folks out there that are buying farmland and doing those, but those properties, they're fewer and farther between. Infill is kind of the new reality, as you see Mr. Tyndall come forward with often. So I'm here if you have any questions.
We do. Councilperson Streetman, you have the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, first, can I get just a little bit of a clarification? Because obviously you talked about the fact that these changes that are in here could essentially double some of the projects that we already have planned.
Yeah.
Can I get you to kind of clear up an earlier statement that was made that it was upon your direction that this didn't need to go through the finance committee?
I saw that email. It was actually, I think, Mr. Baker, city attorney, that sent that. I wasn't. It's a little.
I knew it being your budget, I was pretty
No,
surprised that you wouldn't.
I'm not as fluid on that. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to question that part of it. I know that you've been referenced as far as helping with this. Mr. Smith, looking at this full ordinance, there's a whole lot of different changes in here. In your opinion, what changes do you feel need to be made to our current sidewalk ordinance as we have? And before you answer that, make sure I'm correct that we are already building sidewalks that are ADA compliant.
Yes. Yeah, and our sidewalks, far and above, all of our capital projects that we do largely conform to PRO-AG standards.
Okay.
Some of the other things that are in here, like the 2-foot grass strip and whatnot, 2-foot grass, yes, that's cane detectable. It's not the only method of cane detection. I mean, technically speaking, you could have a 1-inch grass strip or some other vertical delineation that interrupts, that doesn't cost or demand nearly the land that a 2-foot grass strip would to accomplish the same task. But yes, there is considerable cost with the changes.
What changes do you feel need to be made to our current sidewalk ordinance?
Well, I mean, mine are exceptionally simple. I need a comma and the word "and" added to the legislative intent, especially for those folks that are from out of town that are looking at our legislation and looking at developing. The way that it reads, from speaking with both Mr. Tyndall and Mr. Baker, it could be read two different ways. With the addition of a comma and the word "and," it can only be read a single way, which is what our intent is and the way we operate. So, I mean, that's my need. I mean, the rest of the stuff I understand are desires of council, but I really need that comma and that end. I know that seems kind of marginal, but.
Okay, and I know you said that you've, especially in working on this, you've talked with builders, developers in regard to this. And I referenced it earlier, the effect on affordable homes, which, I mean, we're constantly talking about how much we need more affordable homes here, especially when you think about the income level that we've got and this, how big of a effect do you feel this has on that? And this is in regards to not what it costs us to build sidewalks we already have planned, but the new homes being built.
If it doubles our project cost, it's going to, double what their sidewalk budget was, and they're going to afford that. And the important thing is, a builder's not going to eat those costs, and as we all know, they're in business, and that's totally okay. But they have overhead markup that they apply to anything, any portion of the project that they do. So, even if it's a small percentage, like a 5% change in what they're doing, if we already have a threshold of what we feel is not an affordable market, even adding 5%, to bump that, just pushes it that much farther out of reach.
Well, I feel like too often everything we hear Mr. Tyndall talk about, the number of lots and things being situated the way they are to get a specific number of lots. If you take away, again, putting in that 2-foot requirement, everything, you could essentially lose some lots in some of the various developments, which would also have an effect on the price because you now have less homes to be able to make that project work, essentially.
That's correct.
Corner lots, that's a huge amount that they have there. In regard to the current projects that we already have, I mean, this would require you, if this were to go through, are you going to have to come back to us to get additional funding for projects that we're already trying to get done?
Well, yes, and I'll say probably. How about that? Okay. There are, in the mayor's 2020 plan, there are tier 1 through 3 projects. Some of those projects are as yet unfunded. Some projects are funded and are in the design phase. If we're beyond the design phase and we're getting ready to go to construction and this legislation passes and it's the intent of the council to retroactively redesign, so not only do we have additional construction dollars, we're now going back to property owners that we've already acquired land from, and we're asking for more land. And we'll do that if that's the desire of the council, but that's not putting our best foot forward.
Well, and I know it's been mentioned that we can do waivers, but
We can't.
if we're doing a bunch of waivers all for the city, is that really fair to everybody else if it's just a constant do as we say, not as we do type of thing?
Well, nobody does more infill development than the street department. So, when we do these sidewalks, and I can tell you there's a lot of undesirable lots out there. And yeah, I mean, if we're providing that waiver to ourselves and we're not a good steward of our own rules, that's tough to ask a developer to follow and do it when we are waiving it for ourselves. So.
Well, and if we're having to waive it even for them in the various different areas, if we're having to do essentially quite a few waivers, is it really then going to be beneficial, as you mentioned, because you're not going to have the walkability because you're going to have all these breaks
Correct.
in the actual connection of the sidewalk?
Correct.
Right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilperson Reynolds for Mr. Smith.
Thanks,
You're
Mr. Smith.
recognized.
I'd like to just read number G. It says placement of sidewalks. Proposed sidewalks shall be positioned along the entire frontage of the public right-of-way encompassing the boundary of the property, including internal areas of subdivisions. The Director of the Street Department may grant exceptions to this requirement under the following conditions: where physical and topographic constraints would create unsafe sidewalk conditions for pedestrians. If the developing party does not own the land on both sides of the roadway that is proposed for sidewalks, and in the event that the Director of Street Department determines a section of sidewalk is inappropriate or otherwise unfeasible at the time of development or redevelopment, the Director will process the outlined. So we're talking about infill. But When we look at this neighborhood that you have up right there,
Yes.
this neighborhood is only 4 years old. So you're talking about the cost to go back in and fix it, whereas when we had originally put it in, if we had just made the sidewalks as per this guideline, we would not be talking about cost. It would have been done. This is my neighborhood. I will tell you, those mailboxes get knocked down about once a year. 1 or 2 of those mailboxes, the one on the very end that you can't see is so close to the road, it's been knocked down 4 times in 2 years. And these are brand new. So I'm trying to avoid this area. We bring this up, but this is the area that should have had a sidewalk built when they put the houses in. And now, as a community, we're going to have to pay a lot of money to put the sidewalks back in. And at what point do we say a person of low vision or no vision doesn't have the right to move along our roadways the same as a car?
Well, I would submit to you that if I were to install the sidewalks, they're gonna be on the other side of the roadway. So we're not going to have telephone poles, because I'm gonna, as a steward of tax dollars, I'm gonna propose, how do I accomplish sidewalks and again, save? And I can do that on the other side of the roadway far easier than I can do it on this side of the roadway. So at some point when we do put sidewalks in, they're not gonna be on that side of the road. But under the guidelines, they've gotta be on both sides of the road if that's what comes forward.
But many cities, I said, are already following PROWOG. PROWOG was finally approved in August of 2023. So the requirement of 4-foot sidewalks, the requirement of a 2-foot barrier, and the requirement not to have any impediments inside the sidewalks is not if, it's when. And if you are really looking out for our community and paying attention to our AD and being ADA compliant and protecting our most vulnerable residents, and that's what we're here for, is not only for the ables to get into a car, we should do it right the first time, and when we have to fix it, then we have to fix it. Again, I know people say that we shouldn't, but we are still paying on a $40 to $60 million lawsuit that we lost from 2001 for not doing sidewalks ADA compliant, and we're just going to be out there again.
Mr. Smith, don't respond to that. I mean, that's ridiculous. It was $20 million when she started talking, and now it's 40 to 60. Inflation's bad, but it's not that bad. Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Councilperson Reynolds, anything else for Mr. Smith?
No, but thank you for being so kind and
You're welcome. You are welcome. Okay, anything else for Mr. Smith? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Yes, sir.
All right, anything else on this ordinance?
No, that concludes my report.
Concludes your report. All right, we're now ready for new business, which is Resolution 38, 2023-24, resolution expressing the sense of the Clarksville City Council opposing the Education Freedom Scholarship Act in Tennessee. Councilperson Reynolds, you're the sponsor. You are recognized on that resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sure all of us have been following, supporting our schools and supporting going against vouchers. I know many people will say this is a state issue or this is a school board issue, but I'd like everyone to know in the city, we actually, as city payers, pay twice. We pay our county taxes to support schools, which is spent by our school board. But as a city, we also give $74 million in 2023 of a percentage of our taxes into the school budget, as well as paying our property taxes that go into school budgets. So I think it's very important that we stand together to support our public education, our school teachers. 90% of Tennessee children go to public school. Under this law, they plan to provide $7,025 per child to either be homeschooled or go to private school, but only do $5,025 for kids in public school. We have a constitutional requirement to fund our public schools, and I think I support what was stated by our state representative, Ronnie Glenn, that this is a scam and it will only support kids that are already in private school. This is a $7,075 stipend, but I believe that Clarksville High is is about $13,000. So you're really not helping 75% of those kids are already going to be going to public school. So I'll have more to say next week, but I would be happy to have a conversation.
Councilperson Redd, you're recognized on this resolution.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I would just like to say I appreciate the sponsor for having a concern over the public education system and making sure that our children have enough money for education that we have. But, and maybe I should make a disclaimer or a prologue that anytime that, or many times, if you say that you're for some type of innovation or alternative to the school system, then there's going to be those that's going to say, well, you hate children, you hate public education. With me, that's not the case. Both of my parents were school teachers. Both of my daughters are licensed school teachers, although they homeschool today. And but I think sometimes it's one of those things that you can't talk about is education. And because if you want to tweak something just a little bit, people will say, like I said, you don't like children. And let me say this too. This is still a moving target that's going through the state legislature. This is not, the final proposal is not made. We don't know exactly how the legislation is going to look. And here in Montgomery County, I feel like we got great schools here. But you have to remember this resolution is saying pull away from other counties within the state and other areas like Memphis and Knox County, Davison County, and a lot of other places. They have schools that are not so good. And you have children that are high achievers, but because of economic reasons, they can't go to a private school. And this just gives some of those, and it's not like the people will make this sound like, oh, they want to take all the money out of the school system. That's not true. And remember, sometimes the same people that try to be against any type of alternative to the government school system, whether it be homeschools or a private school, they're the same ones that'll say when a zoning request comes up, we can't rezone this area because the schools are overcrowded. I ask you, what would happen if everybody that has their child at homeschool or a private school that they are paying for out of pocket, next year if they signed up to put them all into the public school system? They wouldn't be able to handle it. But in any case, as we all know, the government schools are monopolies, and parents have no choice but to send their children to the local and assigned public school, even if that assigned public school is in a district that's not very good. The only way you can get out of that is you have to go to a private school or you have to homeschool. That is, if you can afford that. My daughter is lucky enough both of my daughters, they homeschool and they can afford it. But most families, they have to have both people in the school system working. And this just gives an alternative for some people to put their children into a private school or to homeschool or an alternative thing. It's not going to ruin the public school system like many people try to make out. And across the state of Tennessee, you know, I heard some statistics from the sponsor, but we spend about $13,000 to $15,000 per student to go to educate them. A private school, one here in Clarksville, is about $3,500. Just think of that. It costs about a third of what the public school system costs if someone wants to go there. So to alleviate the overcrowding in schools and to alleviate places in these counties where they have problems with the school system and had problems for a long time, competition will be good for them. And they don't have to have and should not have a monopoly in those places, because monopolies in our school system, even in some of these counties, even if they are deemed failures, there's no retribution to them whatsoever. But in the private sector, if you don't serve your customer, after a while, you're out of business. If you don't do your job the right way in the private sector, it's gone and another company will come in and take its place. So in some places, there should be competition to the government school system. And I talked too much already, but I'll have a little more maybe to say about that next Thursday. And thank you for your time.
Councilperson Streetman, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this won't be anything new from me. Anytime we've had these political messages that are to be sent to the state or higher up, I abstain from them. That is not what we were elected to do. We were elected to govern the city of Clarksville. To say that this is a resolution expressing the sense of the Clarksville City Council, well, then you're just asking for a resolution that expresses the sense of a majority of 13 people. I don't feel that our voices are any more important when it comes to a state level than our neighbors. To try and say I represent that my voice to the state legislator represents my entire ward, well, that would be very difficult to do, especially on this one. In my ward, I've got parents that have children that go to public schools. I have parents that have kids that go to private schools. I also have parents that have kids that some of their kids go to private schools and some of their kids go to public schools. I've got educators that work in the public school system. I've got educators that work in the private school network. How am I representing all of them by assigning my name to a resolution expressing the sense of the Clarksville City Council when it's also going to be something that's going to be confusing to people in the community when they think that they see how the Clarksville City Council stands one way or another? Well, really, no offense to any of us up here, it doesn't matter. I mean, again, our opinion is not any more important than every other person in this community. And the right ones for everyone to be reaching out to are our state legislators. Please reach out to Senator Bill Powers, Representative Jeff Burkhart, Representative Ronnie Glenn. Representative Curtis Johnson, mine. Please feel free to reach out to all of them and let them know where you stand, because our vote doesn't change anything on a state level. To add to that, the county is who votes on the budget for the school system. While there is money contributed from the city for that budget, that's actually not contributed from the money that we collect for property tax. That's actually based off of, it's a percentage of the sales tax that we collect within the city of Clarksville. So essentially we can say we're paying twice, but so could residents that live outside of the city of Clarksville, because it's pretty good odds they're spending their money inside of Clarksville. So for me, I think this is something that I've even had somebody say to me today, I don't understand why y'all are even talking about this tonight, because this is not anything that the city has any kind of say in, and it's essentially a waste of time and resources for the city for us to be discussing items that we have no effect on. So as I have in the past when we're sending political messages to the state, I will be abstaining.
Councilperson Holloman, you're recognized.
Thank you. I don't have that much of an opinion on this. It's like I don't have children, and I just don't have any that much firsthand experience. So next week, I might not say anything. I might speak for it. I might speak against. At this point, I'm not really focused on that. What I am focused on is all this resolution does is create division and drama in our city, doing absolutely nothing. So congratulations, good job. You're doing a really good job up here. I'm done. Thank you.
Careful. Councilperson Reynolds.
All right, that was really uncalled for, really rude.
All right, let's move on.
All right.
Councilperson Reynolds, you have the floor.
Yes, I would like to say first that there is choice within our school system. The Clarksville-Montgomery County school system does offer very specialized programs to include special education, career and technical education, training aligned with local workforce needs, grow your own initiatives, dual enrollment in college and trade schools, AP placements, a band program, trauma-informed schools. the resource center, mental health resources for our children, and they are an invaluable source for meeting an individual student needs, as well as some of our largest employers in the city. I'd also like to talk about, we talked about making it easy for competition, but I remind you that our state legislature handicaps our schools with accountability. For instance, the 3rd and 4th grade retention acts for our children that have barely survived COVID. And that this is really not about school choice. This is about schools choosing the children. Going to these private schools, you will be able to handpick your children. You will not have to provide the same services as they bring these kids in, and it will put a greater burden on our public education as they choose the cream of the crop. And our schools are working very hard to provide services for the remainder. I will also tell you, I firmly believe as a soldier, I had 10 days to find a home, move into a community, get a place to stay, and get my kids in school. And I think it adds a barrier to Fort Campbell to, again, do vouchers and figure out what private school as a soldier to go to. It should be equitable and equal, and voucher programs are not about equity and equality.
Councilperson Red, you recognize.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be real quick. You know, some of the children in our public schools, they are stuck in other counties, like I said, in bad school systems. Not every place has a good school system like Montgomery County. And the people currently that have their children that homeschool, or they have a child in the a private school, they have to pay 100% of their property tax just like everybody else. Plus, they must pay that tuition for that child to go to a private school or to be homeschooled. And like I said before, think of what would happen if they all decided to go into the public school system. But all of the rhetoric aside and all of the debate aside about this particular issue, is what we should be striving for is what is best for the child. And, you know, I think a lot of this, like one of the previous speakers said, it's just hyperbole to bring in front of the council. But the thing is, it's here. We have to vote on it. Someone said it shouldn't be here, but it is. So I'll just ask you to vote no, even if you just vote no because you don't believe it should be on the agenda. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comment or question? I just have one question for the sponsor. You threw out a number at the beginning, $74 million. You mentioned that in your opening remarks. I wasn't sure who you attributed that to in terms of who's paying it, who's contributing that.
I said, I'm not sure.
I'm sorry. You recognize.
I said $7,025 per child and to go to a private school,
Okay.
and $5,025 to stay in public school.
Thought I heard you talk about $74 million of tax money from the
Oh,
city.
yes. I'm sorry, Mayor. Excuse me. So that
That's
was the
okay. I didn't
number.
ask the question clear enough.
So that is the number that I was provided by the city sales tax that go to the schools every year. So 74 million total this year, and last year it was 69 million.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Any other comment or question regarding this resolution? Seeing none, we're ready for the moment you've been waiting for a whole year, and that's the Ethics Code Review Committee. Chairperson Zacharias, thank you for your work, and you and the committee. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. If you thought sidewalks were exciting, just wait. All right. So good evening. It is my privilege to present the recommendations of the Ethics Code Review Committee tonight. While I get to be the one to deliver the presentation, the information that you are going to receive tonight is the combined effort of many, and I'm excited to be able to share it with you. Before anybody asks, there is a copy of the red line version of the current ethics code in the agenda, or linked in the agenda, and Ms. Canfield, our city clerk, has these slides to send out after tonight's meeting. I'd also like to ask you to hold any questions about how we arrived at some of the recommendations that we did, send them to our clerk, and she will forward them to me. It's not that I don't anticipate questions or don't want to answer the questions. I just ask that you understand that this process has been lengthy, nuanced, and I'd like the opportunity to refer to my notes and maybe some of the minutes from previous meetings before I respond and risk leaving out parts of the discussion and debate that led us to the recommendations that we released. As elected officials, we know that there will be times that we have to put in extra work, whether it be researching ordinances or serving on ad hoc committees like this one. The same can't always be said for the city employees that support us, though. Before I get started, there are a few people that I need to recognize for their support in this process. Ms. Lisa Canfield, our city clerk, Ms. Angie Brake, the executive legal assistant, who made sure that all of our meetings were publicly noticed and we had our minutes recorded. Ms. Stephanie Fox from Internal Audit, whose presence at our meetings was comforting, to be sure. Mr. Baker, our city attorney, who was obviously very involved in this process. And then, not a city employee, but Mr. Saul Solomon, an attorney from Klein, Solomon and Mills, donated some time to come and give us some information. I'd also like to thank Mayor Pitts for the opportunity to chair this committee. I'd be lying if I said I knew how involved this process would be when he asked me if I would chair the committee. I quickly learned that if you want 5 different opinions about ethical conduct in a given situation, you only need to ask 5 different people. If you want to see those 5 people try to convince each other why they're right and you're wrong, put them in a room and tell them they have to meet regularly until they agree. And then finally, if you want that process to take over a year, put these 5 people into that room. All right. In retrospect, I couldn't have asked for a better team of diverse professionals to work with on this committee. Everyone had the opportunity to be heard, to consider opposing viewpoints, and to have their mind changed. Believe it or not, we even took advantage of that opportunity, sometimes multiple times on the same issue. Mayor, you told me that you'd rather it be done right than done fast, and we obliged. I won't try to convince anybody that what we came up with is perfect, because I don't think it's possible for a group of people to agree on everything when you're dealing a topic as subjective as this. But I do believe that what we produce is less imperfect than what we started with, and I'm proud to be able to share it with everybody tonight. And here's a look at how we got here. Oh, wow, that's tiny. I apologize. So November of 2022, this committee was formed. January through April of 2023 were consultations. We met with the city attorney and got information from him. Our director of internal audit reviewed some of the findings from the last internal audit that was done on the Code of Ethics. And then we received some information from Mr. Solomon, again, the attorney with Klein, Solomon, Mills. May through February of 2024 was an in-depth review of the Code of Ethics as it is currently codified. Each month on the agenda, we would go through 1, 2, 3 sections, depending on how long the section was. After receiving, basically, like the process was, we would make our recommendations. The city's legal office would convert that verbiage into the appropriate legal speak. And then we would review that before we would move on to the next session the next month. February 24th, just last week, was our final vote with recommended changes, which I'm presenting to you tonight to be voted on and either adopted or amended further going forward. In doing this, we considered several key questions, and that's really what I want to cover today. All right. The first key question that we addressed, does Section 1-605 financial interests appropriately and adequately define an unethical business interest between a city employee and the city? We did issue a recommendation there. We are asking that the council update 1-605 to state that it is a violation of the Code of Ethics. Basically what we're doing is we're tying the city Code of Ethics to what is already codified in TCA 6-54-107. This is because some of the well, I'm going to leave that. We'll talk about that if anybody has any specific questions about that. But this was just to clear up some vague language. Should appointed members of advisory boards forfeit the ability to enter into contracts or bid on city projects? This was actually a concern that was brought by a department head. Ultimately, even though we understand that that may create some additional challenges in finding people to serve on those boards, it is a restriction that we would like to leave in place and are recommending that we leave in place. Should there be any restrictions on joint ownership of business between city employees? When I say that our minds were changed several times on some issues, we had matrices, we had lines, you know, separating employees into different categories to figure out when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. Really what we came down to is if a city employee in a supervisory position over another city employee should not be in a joint business ownership with each other. Should the Code of Ethics explicitly authorize the Ethics Commission to establish rules related to the hearing process and how a hearing will be conducted? Okay, this was something that was brought to our attention through the internal audit of the current Code of Ethics. We do think that it is appropriate that the Ethics Commission create bylaws that govern how they conduct their meetings, but we are asking that that section 1-614 be amended to require any changes to those bylaws to be reviewed by the city attorney before they are before they are voted on by the Ethics Commission. Should a person who is currently engaged in litigation against the city be entitled to file an ethics complaint against the person or persons involved in that litigation? So what we're going to see here with a couple of these questions is a trend where we are trying to separate or keep a non-judicial ethics commission investigation from occurring at the same time as a criminal or civil lawsuit or judicial issue. This creates some issues with information being found in one process being appropriately or maybe inappropriately is more the concern in the other proceeding. And again, we can talk more about that if anybody has any specific questions. But again, this is a sort of a trend that you will see. Should the Code of Ethics allow the Ethics Commission to perform an advisory function regarding planned activities? Currently, this is not addressed, and we are suggesting that it be addressed in that the Ethics Commission should not be issuing advisory or prospective ethics opinions. Again, this is to eliminate the possibility where information presented while trying to receive that ethics opinion is not completely accurate to the situation that is going on. Yeah. Maybe I'll try to clear that up a little bit. We're trying to eliminate the possibility where somebody seeks an advisory opinion, but the facts presented when seeking that advisory opinion don't necessarily match up with what's happening on the ground. Should the Ethics Commission suspend its investigation if the subject of the investigation is facing criminal or civil charges for the same act? Again, we think that there is a place for the Ethics Commission to investigate these types of things, but only once any criminal or civil action that's currently taking place has been resolved. Are the current requirements to file an ethics complaint too cumbersome or create unnecessary obstacles to those that may want to file a complaint? We spent a lot of time talking about this. This is another issue that came up through the internal audit of our ethics code, and it is our recommendation that the procedure, the process for filing an ethics complaint is appropriate. Should the Ethics Commission receive a budget from the city to be used to conduct investigations? Currently, this is not addressed in the ethics code. And though there is a process where the Ethics Commission can receive funds by, requesting them from City Council, and we felt that that was appropriate. Should the Ethics Commission have the authority to self-initiate an investigation based on publicly available information? Currently, the Ethics Commission does not have the authority to self-initiate an investigation, and this is another one where we thought maybe they should. But after some pretty in-depth study and consideration, we realized what that would essentially be doing is creating a situation where a prosecutor is also the finder of fact or the judge in that situation. So you've got the same entity that is both choosing to start an investigation and then deciding what the results of that investigation would be, which can be problematic. Should the Ethics Commission, city attorney, or any other appointed person be able to make a judgment on whether an ethics violation has occurred, even after assuming all facts presented in a complaint are true? So when we get our information or our briefs from our city attorney, we often hear about this Rule 12 motion to dismiss, where if both sides agree that everything that's alleged in a lawsuit actually happened, is there still a reason that that lawsuit should be dismissed? Maybe it's a statute of limitations issue or something like that. Section 1-621 of the Ethics Code already gives the Ethics Commission the authority to dismiss an ethics complaint if, after assuming all facts are true, they have determined that the conduct doesn't violate the code. We are not recommending that that authority or that ability be expanded to the city attorney or any other appointee. Should a city employee who is the subject of an ethics investigation be entitled to legal representation at city expense? Currently, 1-621 does allow a city employee who has retained legal representation and been cleared of any ethical wrongdoing to request reimbursement from the city council, and we found that that is appropriate. And normally this is where I would put a question slide with a question mark and a little stick figure kind of looking confused. But since I did ask you to hold your questions and forward them to Ms. Canfield, I'm going to close with a quote. The basis for effective government is public confidence, and that confidence is endangered when ethical standards appear to falter. That's why this is so important. That's why I was privileged to be a part of the process, and there we have it.
Okay, thank you. You prefer that the questions be directed in writing to the clerk, who will then forward those to you, so you can then be able to answer those next week?
Yes.
Okay, all right. You've heard the request. Councilperson Streetman, you're recognized.
Mine is not a question. I just want to comment and say to you and your entire committee, what a great job you have done on every bit of this. I know it's been a long process. That was easy to see when I read through everything that was on the agenda for tonight and reading through it. And I just want to thank you for your commitment, as well as to all the members for everything that you put into it. And it sounds like there was a lot of great debates. It might have been just fun to come and listen to you all discuss it. But thank you all for the time that you put into this, the effort and the energy. We do appreciate it.
Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't have a question either, but there is, whenever the names of the committee members were up there, there's one person as well, our attorney Lance Baker, that did a wonderful job, in my opinion, and he came to every meeting and researched the legalese portion of the document that we went through. And I'll just say this about the end result that we've come up with. This product is not perfect, as the chair has just stated, but it is much better than what we have now. And again, I'd just like to thank all the members that was there, and Lance Baker. Thank you.
Okay, any other comment or question? Closing arguments, Mr. Chairman?
That concludes my report.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, thank you and the committee for your work on that. The next portion of our agenda is a non-public attorney-client privilege review by our assistant city attorney on a particular lawsuit. So, ladies and gentlemen of the public, we'll invite you to step outside while the council talks about this lawsuit. And then you'll be invited back in if you're still here, and we'll conclude the meeting. And to the women council members, if you would take your place down here in the well, Jimmy Settle is going to take your picture really quickly. We certainly can. Mr. Settle, we're going to wait because we're missing a few, so. Gentlemen of the public for accommodating that non-public attorney-client privilege review by our Assistant City Attorney. So I will ask Mr. Johnston to please just kind of summarize for us what we discussed and the action necessary.
Thank you, Mayor. We did meet and discuss, or I reviewed the lawsuit that we have on the table with them. This was also discussed at the F&A committee meeting, and they recommended disapproval of the settlement offer.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, that concludes that part of the discussion of our executive session agenda. We're now ready for mayor and council member comments. Any member have a comment? Councilperson Red, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I should have thought about this before we was talking about education, but I would just ask each and every member in the city to keep in their thoughts and prayers Miss Frances Riggins, that was a neighbor of mine. She taught school for 30 years there at Burns Darden, 30 years plus, I think. And both of my girls went there, and she died here just recently. So please keep all those that are affected by her death in your prayers. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other council member have a comment? Okay, now we're ready for the public comment portion of our agenda. Is there a member of the public that wishes address? We have room for 3, 5 minutes each. So we will just line up and try to keep it one topic. And give us your name, and then you have 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Ken Baker. I am a resident of Timber Springs. It's right off of Trenton Road by 180 Church. I'm coming in here today to talk about privatized homeowners associations. I purchased my home in 2022, and there was never a disclosure. There was nothing that ever said that there was any kind of HOA, nothing told to me. And then I got a letter in the mail last year saying that there is going to be an established HOA and that it was going to be turned over to the residents because the developer was in 2/3 of building whatever it is and in their development. And so we met with the attorney at the customs house. He sat and talked with us for 6 minutes, and he said, I am turning it where the developer is turning it over to you guys. I do not represent you. I represent the developer, and he left. And so we all sat there and we said, we don't know what we're supposed to do. And so collectively, a lot of us were very upset. We did not want this HOA. And then, so we met a few more times. I'm sorry, I'm pretty upset about this. My red line for purchasing this home was no HOA, red line. And so we got a letter in the mail this week that said from Byers and Harvey that the establishment of this HOA is going to happen. We now have to start paying money, and we will have a lien put on our house if we are not paying this money and we go into this. And so the letter had stated that the city of Clarksville in return applied pressure to the developer to follow the statutes set by the city to require an HOA. 1st of April, they're going to start collecting this. And the HOA can be very effective if we all work together and respect each other's opinions. Well, this HOA board was established behind all of our backs, along with the developer, and now we are all of our homes and everything else could have liens put on it. None of us want this, and it's all because of the city of Clarksville. I called around to many of the offices today, and it all stems from the city ordinance dealing with cluster developments. So I ask that you all discuss this, and I think that there should be something that's put in here that says that if an HOA is not disclosed being in development from now until whenever, that retroactively those individuals should not have to be forced into an HOA. How would you like it if I all of a sudden came to you and said, you now owe me money, and if you do not give it to me, I'm going to take your house? How would you feel? I'm the type of person that if I have a house, I would like to do with my house as I please. I am not a burden on anybody. I don't have anything excessive in my house. I just want to be left alone. But now they have common areas that are not upkept. There's the common area that they have is a gigantic sinkhole. There's nothing that they can put in there. And then the other common areas that they supposedly have are going to be taken away because they're widening Trenton Road. So all of that stuff that's on the front of our development is all going to be gone. And so we have no recourse. We've actually been told inside of this document that they had sent out to us that we are not allowed, as homeowners to dissolve the HOA. So what is our recourse? We were never told of this, but it all starts with a city ordinance on cluster development. So I ask for you to please look into this, and please understand there is a lot of upset individuals in our neighborhood, and I ask that you probably just do the right thing and help us, because this is an organization that we can't control, and they can impose themselves on us, and there's nothing that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. We're now ready for the second speaker. Give us your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Ascension Lopez Jr., also known as AC Big Sarge Lopez. So I want to take this opportunity. First of all, I'm still waiting on my coils. Cricket, no? Okay. It's I was talking about school choice. The person that I want to talk to, Councilperson Reynolds, is not here. I'm for school choice for the only reason is because there is a drastic learning loss for the Latino Hispanic community here in Clarksville, Montgomery County. And so we have hit, I feel that the Hispanic community was hit hardest with the COVID, with the amount of learning loss that we have. The school board, they got the graphs and everything that shows that, and that I feel that school choice is if any of y'all could give me a better product that the school is providing us, because I'm all for that. So I know we have a Spanish immersion class. I know there's extra classes and everything that the students can do. It's just that my reason that I support school choice is because the Hispanic Latino community has been hit the hardest here in Clarksville and Montgomery County. Speaking of that, is the other thing while we're talking about schools, I know there's nothing y'all can do about it. I know. It's y'all can't fire nobody, y'all can't review nobody, y'all can't sue nobody. But there is some instances in schools that are being not very taken care of. Now, me as a citizen, as a fair tax-paying citizen, right? It's a grandparent with 8 children that go to West Creek, the complex there, elementary, middle school, everything like that. It's concerning that, I'm sorry, but teachers are putting hands on kids, and I don't think that's right. It's my nice little sign right there says Justice for Landon. I believe you were emailed about that, Mr. Mayor, and I know these last few years you have been a tremendous supporter of the Hispanic community, especially here in Clarksville, coming out to our parades, coming out to our festivals, and enjoying it. And I know it probably bothered you just a little bit, or it should bother us, that a Afro-Latino military child was assaulted by a teacher in our school system. Why is this a city problem? Because it's our citizens. It's our citizens that do it. So, Ms. Maris, the parent that did make the complaint to you, she's 100% appreciative of all the help that you gave her, and referencing that to Ronnie Glenn. State Representative Ronnie Glenn. So, she thought you were very compassionate, and it's just the ability to hear out a citizen when something that's so special, so deep within you gets hurt, and then nobody's listening. And then we have this chance for public comment. We have this chance to reach out to our local leaders and actually get our voice heard. And that is why I'm up here. I am up here to say thank you. I know nobody, at least the people that talk to me, they don't like you. They don't like the city council. They don't like the taxes and everything like that. I'm all for the new tax. So just saying. your leadership, your ability to make a stand, say what it is, and you're caring for the citizens, it shows. And that's why I want to say thank you. And if 30 seconds to go off subject, I've been 22 countries around this world. I have seen the worst of humanity, the absolutely worst. The smart people say the only thing that revives mankind is its arts and its culture. Well, I am a Reagan Republican, and I hate taxes. I hate taxes with the pit of my soul. Doing taxes so we could get something beautiful in our city, like this, and get people together to make something beautiful. Oh, I'll pay the 4%. Thank you.
Thank you, right on time. We're now ready for the next speaker. We have room for one more, so if y'all want to flip a coin.
I'm already here.
Well, I think that,
I let him go for, he's a veteran, and so I let him go in front.
okay.
Just saying, one more person.
Okay, our rules, our code says 3 people, 5 minutes each. Mr. Callback?
Hello, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm David Colback. I live on Madison Street. On May 25th of last year, I spoke with this group about handicap parking violations and the way the city isn't enforcing them. I just spoke with the chief of police right before this meeting. He says there's no problem because last year they only got 26 calls from businesses about handicap parking violations. Big businesses aren't going to call the cops. It's got to be the people who are marginalized by these folks using their parking spaces. Nobody's doing anything about it. So, in fact, a couple of board members even spoke to me after I spoke on May 25th about they're aware of the problem. Okay, so we all know CPD does not enforce violations. They say publicly they are understaffed and have higher priorities. I spoke on May 25th. You guys did nothing about it, but you spent a lot of time discussing sidewalk chalk. I found a solution right in the Tennessee Code that can solve our problem with very little cost to the city, requiring no manpower from the force. TCA 5521-110 says, a law enforcement agency authorized to enforce parking laws may appoint a volunteer to issue a citation for violations dealing with parking privileges for persons with disabilities. Notwithstanding any law to the contrary, any county, municipality, or metropolitan government may establish a special enforcement unit for the sole purpose of providing adequate enforcement relative to disabled parking. Anyway, I sent a screenshot of this to the mayor. He forwarded it to the chief. The city on multiple occasions illegally delayed my access to that specific public information and actually denied me some of the requested information. That's your boss. That's a violation of Tennessee's freedom of information law, and Clarksville is stifling my rights. The chief said it was a bad idea, it could be dangerous, and squelched the idea. I emailed Chief Cockrell, asking him to explain the logic behind saying it could be dangerous. He did not reply. So a couple of weeks later, I called his office and asked for an interview with him. I told his secretary I was an independent journalist and I wanted to talk to him about handicap parking. Background, during my activism, I got a warrant sworn against me and I was arrested. But the charges have since been dropped and expunged, dismissed and expunged. Chief Cockrell looked me up in the system when his secretary said I wanted an interview. Saw my charges, saw who my lawyer was, and called him. Told him that if I went to the press, my case would go bad for me. This is a blatant misuse of government equipment and information. Most importantly, a violation of First Amendment right to freedom of the press and due process. Being done by a law enforcement officer, it's a retaliation in violation of 42 USC 1983. So I got plenty of ammunition for a federal lawsuit, federal civil rights lawsuit against the city, the mayor, the council, and the chief of police. A lawsuit of this type will generate a lot of negative press about Clarksville and its government. I have ample ammunition to go to the Tennessee Police Oversight Board on the chief. A condition of settlement of the lawsuit would be implementation of that volunteer program, and of course, as much money as my lawyer can get from the city, plus the cost of the lawsuit for you guys. All I want is for handicap parking to be enforced. Chief of Police says there's no problem. I say there is. If the city decides to implement this program of volunteer enforcement and hold it for at least a year to study its effectiveness, I won't sue. But otherwise, I'm going to all the social media. In fact, this film right here will be on YouTube. I'm moving forward with this lawsuit and complaint unless I hear from you people within 2 weeks. My time's up.
Your time's up. Thank you, Mr. Callback. Members of the council, before I adjourn, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Before I adjourn, I'm going to invite council members, if you wish to hear from the person who wanted to speak, we will step down because we're going to adjourn the meeting and hold it to the rule and the law that we're sworn by oath to uphold. And we'll step down, and he'll have 5 minutes or whatever time we'll give him. So I just want to let you know that. So we'll stand adjourned. Councilperson Redd.
I was going to make a motion to suspend the rules. It takes 2/3 majority just for this case. And then we could have, because this gentleman was standing, I think, somebody said make a line. And he was standing there in line to say something. So I would move to suspend the rules so he can come up just for this particular gentleman to speak.
Okay. Motion is second. Any objection to that? Hearing none. You have 5 minutes. Give us your name.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the commendation here. Roshan Patel, local hotel owner here. Been in the hotel industry my entire life. Grew up in it. My father was a first generation hotel owner here. We've had many successes in Clarksville. His partners were one of the first 2 Hampton Inns in the nation that were built here. One in Memphis, and the second one was here in Montgomery County. Now Hampton Inn is one of the largest and one of the most successful chains out there. So we understand, economics and how consumer trends happen. A few things that I want to clear up. The lady that was talking earlier about the center, she said that there's no more money to get at the city. Not true. Every municipality in the state of Tennessee had a home run rule that gave them 10%. Now, however you go back out there and get it, city, county, you deal with that. You have 2% still left that the state can give you. But I'll tell you why the 2% won't matter here, because the 4% is what matters on the budget. That is what funds the complete center. Now, should that be directly directed to just one industry in the entire system? No. There's going to be a lot of people that come here that travel, that eat at the bar right across the street in the Commons, the restaurants, hotel bar that's going to open up here next door. All of those people that visit that, they're going to escape the taxes. But the soccer moms, baseball moms are the ones that are going to book our hotels, come here for events, and have to pay $4 to $6 more per room per night. Average stay on tournament weekends are 3 to 5 nights. $30 to a family. In today's world, where $4 doesn't go that far, but at least $4 buys you a gallon of milk. So to us, maybe $2 and $3 is not much, but to the soccer mom that has to pay the exorbitant amount to come play in these tournaments, travel, gas, food, we're asking them to come out another $5 or $6. Hey, I'm all about for the arts. Let's find another funding mechanism. When we build hotels in the private sector, if I run out of money during the development, or if I don't have enough money before the development, I don't develop the product because I don't ask the city or state for money. We build these hotels with equity, with money that we've earned from other businesses, and we continue to invest in these markets. We have tons of hotels here now. We are the stewards to your consumers. First people that they see when they come in, last people that they see when they leave. We are the ones that control the quality of the hotel rooms. And I would think with the success that Clarksville has, we've done a good job with that. We know the business. We know that 21.5%, I think you have an email that I sent earlier today, showing us that have the 21.5% tax rate, higher than Nashville. And I guarantee you, I've done this before, we fought this in multiple municipalities with success, that New York City, Los Angeles, Dallas, Austin are way lower than 21.5%. Pick it. Find a hotel downtown Times Square, guarantee you're paying less than 21.5% rate. Yeah, you may argue that the hotel rates are high, agreed. There's still suburbs in New York that still pay less than us, right? So with that said, all we're asking for was a time to come and present our facts, our time to get in front of you. I would hope if you were targeting one industry, one sector, you would sit down with the leaders of that sector in your market and say, hey, here's what we're proposing. Let's sit down, let's have a conversation. Maybe we can take that number from 4 to 2. Maybe you go do your due diligence with the county and say, hey, county, you guys took 8% out of the 10. Give us back a point or two, right? Let's talk about it, because at the end of the day, this is going to still benefit the county. It's still going to benefit the city. But this way, this was all predetermined in my eyes, right? Because we didn't find out about this until yesterday or the day before that this was coming through the system. Maybe a candid conversation was had with 1 or 2 hotel owners, but nothing to the gravity or magnitude of being pushed through this quickly. All I ask is for next week, pull it off the consent agenda, let us have the debate, let me send you more facts this week. You'll get one concise voice from the MTHA that'll show you. And I'll show you the studies that we've done, the issues that we've had in Mount Juliet, Wilson County, that have tried this. Mount Juliet actually had to repeal a 1% tax because they were 22.5 at some point. And they figured out that it wasn't a good deal. So after a year, I've never heard this, that a county or a city will draw back a tax. They had to do that. I encourage you to reach out to the city council there and see how that process went. And you go back and take a percent off of that at the end. So I'm just saying you have time, 6 months. Like the gentleman, Councilman Red was saying, yeah, we've had hotel projects that maybe are not approved by the city, that we're taking a 1 or 2 month, 3 month hit in the private money. So if you have to take 10 or 14 days extra, get us in here, let us give you the facts, let us give you our thoughts. I think that's the fairest way to do this, because we were not given that opportunity before I came here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. We stand adjourned.